Hello everyone, and welcome to Renrink's Pokemon Tournament. A while back, Renrink decided to hold a tournament in her Discord that ended up with some really good games, some interesting teams, and a lot of fun had by all. So I thought I would go through the recordings of the matches and give some commentary, tell you all what happened. So, first match is between Luncraft and Pika. And let's see how this goes. So, Luncraft is leading with a Rain team, and bringing in his Pelipper first, able to set up the Rain immediately, while Pika has a fairly balanced team, leading with Ferrothorn, which is a great matchup into Pelipper. Pelipper is going to U-turn out and switch out of that scary matchup, but takes damage from Iron Barbs and Rocky Helmet, and Luncraft makes a very risky switch, brings Seismitoad into Ferrothorn, as Pika goes for the Stealth Rock. So Seismitoad goes for the Earth Power, does about half to Ferrothorn, as Ferrothorn stays in and goes for Spikes. So it either didn't have Power Whip or wasn't scared of this Seismitoad. Pika switches out, brings in his Landorus, which is a great play, able to immune that Earth Power, but Seismitoad is faster under Swift Swim, and with Weather Ball is able to knock Landorus out in a single turn. So Pika brings in Kartana, hoping to use the threat of fast Grass-type offense to force Seismitoad out, but Luncraft calls his bluff here. Seismitoad is faster than Kartana unless it's Choice Guard, and with Earth Power and Kartana's horrible special defense, Seismitoad is able to knock Kartana out. Now Pika brings in Barraskewda, which apparently has Swift Swim of its own, as it's able to outspeed the Seismitoad and go for the 2KO with Ice Fang, though Seismitoad is able to hit a Focus Blast to severely damage Barraskewda. So finally, the Rampaging Frog is down, and Luncraft is going to have to send something else in to continue his offense. He also only has one more turn of Rain, so he decides to bring in Ferrothorn, which gets chipped by the entry hazards, but can threaten out this Barraskewda. Pika decides to go into Blacephalon, and Luncraft makes a great read here, goes for the knockoff, and with super effective damage and Ferrothorn's fairly respectable attack, is able to knock out that Blacephalon in a single hit. Pika, with his back to the wall here, not many mons that can really challenge a Ferrothorn, is going to switch in his Weavile. Goes for a knockoff, and is able to get rid of Ferrothorn's leftovers, as Ferrothorn is going to start setting up spikes. Because the first knockoff only did about 40%, Pika's going to have to rely on a 3-hit triple axle to finish off Ferrothorn from here, and it's going to take some serious damage from Iron Barbs. But we do see the triple axle, first hit, second hit, and the third hit unfortunately misses, as Ferrothorn is able to go for knockoff and get rid of Weavile's boots. So triple axle is a very strong move, but you have to, it makes 3 separate accuracy checks, each one a 10% chance to miss, and if any hit misses, you're losing a lot of your damage. And here the first hit of triple axle misses, unfortunately, and Ferrothorn is able to bring Weavile down to the point where a single hit from Iron Barbs will knock it out. So Weavile really in a tough position here, probably going to go for the knockoff just to get a little bit of damage off. As Pika has to figure out how he's going to muscle through Luncraft's really scary team. We do see the triple axle does a reasonable amount thanks to the Swords Dance, but the first hit of Iron Barbs is able to knock out Weavile, so it doesn't take subsequent hits. Now Pika brings in his Ferrothorn, and this Ferrothorn is going to have to work a miracle here, because Barraskewda is going to faint as soon as it switches into Spikes. Luncraft's Ferrothorn goes for the knockoff, but is knocked out by Pika's Ferrothorn, as it has Iron Barbs and Rocky Helmet. But Luncraft is able to bring in his Moltres. We see it doesn't take damage from the Stealth Rock, which shows that it has an item called Heavy Duty Boots, that allows it to ignore entry hazards. Sets up the Nasty Plot as it takes a Body Press from Ferrothorn, but will likely be able to knock Ferrothorn out here. There's the Fiery Wrath. Is able to knock out Ferrothorn from that range, and Barraskewda faints as soon as it switches into the Spike. Poor fish. And Luncraft takes game 1. So going into game 2, both players understand what their game plan is. Pika really needs to shut down that Pelipper to make sure that Seismitoad and Barraskewda don't have so much speed that they can threaten everything. While we see a different team here from Pika, bringing in Umbreon and a Tapu Koko. Tapu Koko quite strong into Pelipper here, but probably doesn't have a move to hit Seismitoad. We do see Luncraft brings in his Seismitoad as Tapu Koko sets up the Calm Mind, and we'll see, I believe it can get Grass Knot, but it's not that common to run it. So we'll see if Luncraft respects it. Pika seemingly doesn't have it, switches into Landorus as Seismitoad is able to get at the Stealth Rock. That is the big advantage of having Stealth Rock on your offensive Pokemon, is in situations like this where you force your enemy to switch out, you can use the Stealth Rock and not fear, and offensive Pokemon are more likely to cause those forced switches. So Pika is going to bring in his Slowbro, takes a Weather Ball for not that much damage. And Seismitoad goes for the Focus Blast. I'm not sure what he was predicting here, but it misses anyway, as Slowbro sets up a Future Sight. So in 2 turns, that'll damage the whatever Pokemon is out in Luncraft's side, and really encourages him to have either Ferrothorn or Moltres, who can take that Future Sight easily, on the field in 2 turns. So we'll see how Luncraft chooses to play around that. This is also good for Pika because Luncraft having to switch around and try and play around this Future Sight means less turns for him to abuse Rain. Seismitoad is able to go for another Weather Ball, continues to get more damage onto Slowbro as Slowbro goes for a Scald, playing into the Rain itself. And because Seismitoad has Swift Swim, it doesn't have Water Absorb, so it takes a severe damage from that Scald. Luncraft brings in Moltres, a good switch here as it's able to immune that Future Sight, while Pika takes this opportunity to have his Slowbro use Slack Off and heal most of his health. But Slowbro will likely have to switch out here for fearing a Fiery Wrath from Moltres. Yeah, we do see Pika switches in his Heatran as Moltres goes for Nasty Plot. Seeing Leftovers makes me think it's a defensive Heatran, but there's 1 turn of Rain up still, so if Heatran wants to go for a Magma Storm to damage this Moltres, it won't be as powerful as normal, and look at that damage. At +2, he does half health with a resisted hit to Heatran. Moltres goes for another Hurricane as Heatran protects. It's able to heal itself out of 2-hit KO range from that Hurricane. Moltres goes for the Fiery Wrath though, and that's able to knock Heatran out. Big damage there from that Moltres. Pika has a pretty good answer in Tapu Koko, but we'll see what he does. If Pika isn't able to one-hit KO Moltres, Moltres has an ability called Berserk, which gives it a special attack boost once it's reduced down to 50% HP, and that could make it even more threatening. Pika does switch in Tapu Koko, and can likely knock Moltres out with a Thunderbolt, but you see here, he goes for the Dazzling Gleam, likely predicting Seismitoad to come in, and Moltres has quite good bulk, so it lives the hit, gets its Berserk, and is able to bring Tapu Koko almost down with a Fiery Wrath. Now, Luncraft brings in his Ferrothorn, which is able to easily tank Tapu Koko's Dazzling Gleam. And we see Tapu Koko healing itself with Roost as Ferrothorn is able to start setting up hazards. Pika doesn't really have a great switch into this Ferrothorn here. Ferrothorn is able to knock off Tapu Koko's boots, so if it wants to switch out and then switch in again, it'll be taking hazard damage. It's possible that Tapu Koko could, with a combination of Roost and Calm Mind, buff itself to the point where it could start threatening out this Ferrothorn, and that might be Pika's only chance, with all of Luncraft's team still active and Pika's team hurting a little bit. But he has to weather these hits from Ferrothorn's Power Whip, which are dealing quite high damage, and Tapu Koko can't buff his physical defense. So, I do think Luncraft eventually wins this matchup. Pika seems to agree with me, is going to switch in Landorus Therian, and it takes a Power Whip, but thanks to Intimidate, does relatively little damage to Lando. But This is a great opportunity for Lundcraft here to bring in his Pelipper, and Landorus is able to defog away all of the hazards, but that does affect both players, so that gets rid of Pika's own hazards as well. And Pelipper is able to go for a fairly safe U-turn here, and bring in one of Lundcraft's scary Swift Swim Pokemon. Landorus is going to go for the U-turn first, does a minor amount of damage, and brings in Slowbro, as Pelipper is able to go for the U-turn. You can see it doesn't do that much damage even though it's super effective. Pelipper is not the greatest offensive Pokemon, at least not on the physical side, but it serves the very important purpose of allowing Lundcraft to choose his switch, and he decides to go with Moltres. Moltres can hit hard with, goes for Hurricane it looks like, but Slowbro gets high damage with Scald. Moltres will probably not be able to knock Slowbro out with that damage range, and Slowbro will certainly be able to take Moltres out here with the second Skull. So we'll see what Lundcraft decides to do. Goes for the Fiery Wrath, and with the super effective damage, that is able to knock Slowbro out. But Pika can fairly safely bring in Kartana or Tapu Koko to revenge kill it. We'll see which he chooses. Does decide to go for Kartana. Moltres is definitely not faster than Kartana, but Pika has to predict in case of a switch. Does go for Leaf Blade, and is able to knock out Kartana and gets an attack boost, but this means Lundcraft can bring in his Ferrothorn, and decides to go into Barraskewda. Barraskewda, I believe, is faster than Choice Scarf Kartana, so this is a reasonable play. He'll probably have to use Close Combat to threaten the KO, though, so we'll see how Pika predicts around it. If he brings in Lando, though, as Barraskewda goes for a Water-type attack, that'll almost certainly knock out Lando. But Pika, being a little bit behind here, probably has to make a risky play. We'll see what he decides. This turn will be very pivotal in this game. He decides to go into Umbreon, tanks a banded Barraskewda's Close Combat, and with the critical hit is able to knock Umbreon out in a single hit. So that unfortunately costs Pika his Umbreon, but at the very least he knows what move Barraskewda has locked itself into, and can bring in a Mon to counter. Lundcraft is also running out of rain turns here. Does decide to go into Tapu Koko, does Pika. So that'll immediately threaten out this Barraskewda, but Lundcraft does have good switch-ins available to be able to threaten this Tapu Koko. Instead, he decides to just sacrifice his Barraskewda to get shit damage on the Tapu Koko. He's able to severely weaken it, but is knocked out by a Thunderbolt. There's, I believe, one more turn of rain, but Lundcraft decides to go into Ferrothorn as Tapu Koko uses Roost. And unfortunately, Lundcraft misses the Power Whip. Rain ends here, so Lundcraft will have to bring in Pelipper if he wants to use it again. Crucially, he's running Weather Ball on his Seismitoad, so he doesn't have a Water-type move unless Rain is up. Tapu Koko trying to damage Ferrothorn with a Thunderbolt, but even with the electric terrain, Ferrothorn resisting the move and having such great defenses, is able to take it easily. So Tapu Koko is going to need quite a few Calm Minds to be able to threaten out this Ferrothorn, and with the electric terrain gone, that hurts his damage output even more. Ferrothorn does miss another Power Whip. With Calm Mind and Roost, and outspeeding Ferrothorn, Tapu Koko can keep itself alive for quite a while, but Ferrothorn will eventually get a critical hit, and Ferrothorn can also use this opportunity to set the hazards back up. So Tapu Koko continuing to heal itself with Roost, Ferrothorn continuing to go for the Power Whip. Pika's going to need quite a few Power Whip misses if he wants to take out this Ferrothorn, as he's probably going to need 6 Calm Minds to even think about knocking it out in a few hits. But Pika doesn't really have many other options, as, Kartana could come in, it could probably threaten Ferrothorn out with the Sacred Sword, but then Lundcraft could bring in his Pelipper, set up the rain, and sweep the rest of Pika's team with Seismitoad. So Pika really between a rock and a hard place here. But he hasn't lost this game. We'll see if he's able to pull something out. Tapu Koko continuing to heal itself, does get another miss, so that's good for Pika. Must be frustrating for Lundcraft though. 85% accuracy on that Power Whip. Has missed how many times? Does get another hit here. And Tapu Koko basically has to roost every turn unless Ferrothorn misses a Power Whip. I believe they both have the same amount of PP, so so Ferrothorn will eventually run out of Power Whips. Does decide to go for Spikes here. And Tapu Koko does roost off that damage, so Ferrothorn is able to hit it with another Power Whip, and probably Tapu Koko will run out of Roost. Pika decides he doesn't want to wait for that, is going to go into Lando, gets hit by Knockoff. That was a good read by Lundcraft, is able to get rid of Lando's leftovers, and Lando is going to have to try and threaten out this Ferrothorn. Lundcraft brings in Pelipper, Landorus is able to defog away the hazards, but now that Rain is up, Seismitoad suddenly becomes a huge threat. Pelipper goes for Scald and is able to knock out Landorus. While the U-turn isn't that strong, Pelipper with Rain Boost and its much better special attack can threaten things out with Scald. As Pika brings in his Tapu Koko. Lundcraft makes the switch into Seismitoad. If Tapu Koko had gone for the Dazzling Gleam on the switch, he might have had something going here. But now that Seismitoad is in safely, it can probably just click Earth Power twice and win this game for Lundcraft. It has just enough HP to survive 2 Life Orb recoils. So we'll see what Pika decides to do. Seismitoad is not very fast, but Swift Swim doubling your speed is going to make it faster than the normally very quick Tapu Koko. Well, Pika, considering his options here, if he switches Kartana in on a Weather Ball, he might be able to live, but we've already seen that Seismitoad is faster than Kartana, and he does not have enough time to wait out the rain here, so it looks like this is checkmate for Lundcraft. We'll see. Seismitoad does go for Earth Power, and is able to outspeed and one-hit KO the Tapu Koko, and as we've seen from last game, it's faster and knocks out Kartana with an Earth Power. So Pika contemplating defeat here, but there is no way that he can get back in this game without some weird move that Kartana doesn't usually have, like Protect. But he has basically lost this game at this point, as Seismitoad is faster. So, Lundcraft just needs to click the Focus Blast, just needs to click the Earth Power here, rather. And we will be going on to our next match, as Lundcraft is able to take it 2-0 over Pika any moment now. Any moment now. And goes for the Focus Blast, which was very much an unnecessary risk. That has a 30% chance of missing, but is able to knock it out. So next up is Vigilant Wall, going up against Emerald Lasers. And we see Vigilant Wall is also bringing a Rain team, though instead of the fairly standard Rain offense of Barraskewda and Seismitoad, he's bringing Armaldo, whereas Emerald Lasers is bringing a fairly standard defensive team with a couple of mons we don't see, Azumarill and Crobat. So we'll see how those mons do. Vigilant Wall does lead with Pelipper, as Emerald Lasers decides to lead with Rotom Wash. This is an excellent matchup for Lasers, as not only does he threaten out Pelipper, but Rotom can go for Volt Switch. Instead, Vigilant brings in his Garchomp, as Rotom goes for the Will-O-Wisp. That was an excellent play by Emerald, as Burn, having Garchomp's attack, will cripple it unless Vigilant is able to somehow cure it. We do see the pitiful damage coming out from that Outrage, while Rotom misses a Hydro Pump. But it looks like Vigilant is just going to sacrifice Garchomp here to get as much damage as he can. Might be able to take out this Rotom here. No, doesn't look like it. And we do see Rest coming out from Rotom as it heals up with the Chesto Berry. So, and Burn knocks out the Garchomp. So Rotom is able to heal up all the damage it took from fighting that Garchomp, but because the Chesto Berry is now consumed, it's not able to do that more than once. So Vigilant Wall brings in his Conkeldurr. I wonder if he's trying to beat a specific Pokemon with that. Conkeldurr almost certainly has Guts, so it's not scared of a Rotom's Will-O-Wisp, and will likely be able to force this Rotom out. Alternatively, Rotom could go for a Hydro Pump. With the rain that Vigilant Wall so graciously set up for him, it would probably be a 2-hit KO on Conkeldurr, unless he misses again. So we do see Conkeldurr goes for the Drain Punch, does under half, but with the damage bonus he gets from Guts, now that his Flame Orb has activated, the second Drain Punch will likely knock it out, and Rotom probably will not one-hit KO with Hydro Pump, so decides to go into Crobat. All around a strong answer to Conkeldurr, as it takes that hit quite easily. Vigilant Wall goes into Heatran, easily takes Conkeldurr's Brave Bird, but there's one more turn of rain here, which will again dampen Heatran's fire moves. But this would be a good opportunity for Vigilant to set up Stealth Rock if he has it. Well, he does, but Crobat, with the fast taunt, able to stop Heatran from using the Stealth Rock, is also able to take out half of Heatran's HP with the Super Fang, but in return takes a critical hit from Flamethrower, which deals heavy damage to the Crobat. So Crobat probably wants to switch out here. Instead goes for Roost, as Vigilant brings back in his Pelipper. So that's able to set the rain back up, get the doubled speed for Armaldo if he wants to bring it in, but once again it means Heatran won't be able to threaten with fire moves. Pelipper goes for the Hurricane, does reasonable damage to Crobat, but Crobat can heal it up with Roost, and is certainly faster than Pelipper. Emerald brings in Ferrothorn, a good switch into Pelipper, but takes a Hurricane, does about half. Pelipper is forced out here, as Ferrothorn is able to get at the Stealth Rock. And Conkeldurr can definitely scare out this Ferrothorn, but it might also want to, if it has a move like Ice Punch or Stone Edge, go for that, hoping to catch Crobat on the way in. So we'll see what he goes for here. Emerald Lasers decides to bring in Azumarill, as Conkeldurr goes for the safe Drain Punch, does about a third to Azumarill, but Conkeldurr probably needs to switch out here, as Azumarill threatening a KO with Play Rough. Yeah, Vigilant has a pretty good wall for it in Toxapex, which he does bring in here. Azumarill goes for the Aqua Jet. I'm not sure what he was predicting there, but Aqua Jet does minimal damage to Toxapex. Emerald is going to bring in his Ferrothorn. Toxapex goes for a knockoff, takes Iron Barb damage, but is able to get rid of Ferrothorn's leftovers. Now, neither of these mons can really threaten to knock out the other, but both of them can really accomplish a lot with 3 turns. Vigilant Wall decides that he's going to blink first. He's immediately going to bring in his Conkeldurr as Ferrothorn sets up Leech Seed. So, with that plus the burn damage from Conkeldurr's own Flame Orb, it's able to get a bit of chip down. But if Conkeldurr can land a Drain Punch on Ferrothorn, it can knock it out and probably heal to full as well. So we'll see what he decides to do. We saw Emerald Lasers bring in the Azumarill here, but he can't do that too many times. Azumarill doesn't have a way of healing itself, whereas Crobat, for example, does. Now, both players considering their options here. Emerald is going to bring back in the Azumarill. Takes quite a bit of damage from that Drain Punch, though. But with the Leech Seed damage, that was set by Ferrothorn, but it continues to apply even if Ferrothorn switches out. So here it's able to heal up that Azumarill out of range of a second Drain Punch. Vigilant Wall brings in his Toxapex, which takes a knockoff from Azumarill. That's good, getting its Black Sludge, but Toxapex can still probably wall Azumarill, so Emerald Lasers decides to go into Crobat as Vigilant Wall brings back in the Pelipper. So we've seen this matchup a couple of times before. Crobat wants to just stall out rain turns. We do see Crobat goes first, gets off the roost, but is hit quite hard and confused by Pelipper's Hurricane. I wonder if Vigilant will start using Scald, as that probably has higher damage potential than Hurricane in the rain and threatens a burn. So we'll see what Vigilant decides to do. He could just as easily switch out this Pelipper as... we do see the Scald, and gets the burn on Rotom. Now, we've seen that Rotom has Rest, which could heal its burn, but without the Chesto Berry, it would need to wait 2 turns of sleep before it could do anything else. So we do see the Rest here. It's going to heal up as Pelipper stays in the face of a one-hit KO from an Electric Move and defogs away the entry hazards. So we see Blissey as Vigilant Wall brings in Blissey Beater. Alright, this of course is an excellent matchup for Vigilant. Blissey is almost certainly going to be forced to switch out here. As Conkeldurr threatens not only the OHKO, but to get all of its health back from Drain Punch. So we'll see what Emerald Lasers decides to bring in, or if he just wants to sacrifice this Blissey, and we'll see if Vigilant decides to predict something. I believe we've seen Drain Punch and Knockoff from Conkeldurr. It always carries Mach Punch, but we haven't seen its 4th move, so it very well could have Ice Punch or Stone Edge still. Both players deliberating this decision, always difficult to decide which Pokemon you want to switch into your opponent's Wall Breaker. Does choose Azumarill, and we do see the Drain Punch is able to knock the Azumarill out, even though it's resisted. Conkeldurr is such high damage output with Guts. But Emerald Lasers is able to bring in his Crobat, and does threaten Conkeldurr out with Brave Bird. So Vigilant, we do see finally the Swift Swim abuser, Armaldo, which tanks that Brave Bird relatively well, and with Swift Swim is able to outspeed Crobat, but there's only one more turn of rain, so it really needs to get some offense down now before it's probably forced to switch out. Emerald Lasers is going to bring in his Ferrothorn, as Armaldo goes for the Stone Edge, does, you know, as much damage as you would expect from a not very effective hit. And Armaldo decides to stay in here, doesn't need the rain to outspeed a Ferrothorn, goes for X-Scissor, but it takes quite a bit of damage from Iron Barbs and Life Orb, but Ferrothorn is able to knock it out with Power Whip. So that's Vigilant Wall's Rain Abuser down, and really his reason to be using Rain is gone. So Vigilant is going to bring back in the Conkeldurr. It does threaten out Ferrothorn, and now with Azumarill gone, Emerald Lasers really only has one Pokemon that he can switch into Conkeldurr. So here it is, here's the Crobat, but with 4 times resistance to fighting moves, Crobat of course being Flying and Poison, it's able to take that Drain Punch easily. And now this is an important turn for both players. Crobat could Brave Bird and probably knock out Conkeldurr, but it would be knocked out by Recoil. We do see the Brave Bird, but Vigilant Wall brings in his Heatran, takes a critical hit, but because of the resistance is able to take it fairly well. And we've seen Crobat, its only real moves to hit Heatran are Super Fang and Brave Bird. Super Fang will never knock it out, because it only does half of the opponent's current HP, and Brave Bird being resisted. So Crobat is going to heal up with Roost, as Heatran gets a Flamethrower, and we'll see how these players decide to dance around each other. This would probably be a good opportunity for Vigilant to set up Stealth Rock again. Crobat continues to heal itself with Roost, and it looks like Heatran is trying to fish for the Flamethrower Burn. That would certainly help lower Crobat's offense. Heatran goes for the Will-O-Wisp as Emerald Laser switches in his Rotom, but Rotom, already asleep, can't be statused again. Rotom going to try and take this opportunity to burn one of its sleep turns, but that gives Vigilant a free chance to switch in Conkeldurr. Goes for another and Conkeldurr does reveal Ice Punch, but Rotom was staying in to try and wake up. And unfortunately, the Ice Punch basically bounces off the Rotom. Rotom wakes up, able to get off a Hydro Pump, but takes big damage from Conkeldurr's Drain Punch. And we do see there the Mach Punch, able to bypass Conkeldurr's really poor speed and knock out that Rotom. So, but at this point, we know Conkeldurr has Ice Punch, and that will certainly knock out Crobat from this range, but Crobat is much faster, so it forces Conkeldurr out, and is able to go for the Brave Bird, severely damaging the Pelipper that Vigilant Will is forced to switch in. And goes for a second Brave Bird, is able to knock out the Pelipper. That's not the biggest deal, as Vigilant didn't really need Pelipper for anything, but a KO is a KO. Vigilant forced to bring in his Heatran here. Once again, he could get up the hazards, but Heatran, we've seen Flamethrower, which means he likely doesn't have Magma Storm, and without Magma Storm and Taunt, Heatran is walled by Blissey. Heatran goes for the Will-O-Wisp here, able to get the burn on the Blissey, but Blissey has Natural Cure, so as soon as it switches out, that burn will be cured. Blissey going for the Seismic Toss does exactly 100 damage. Seismic Toss does damage equal to your level, and is a great way for mons like Blissey who don't have good offense to deal consistent damage. And is actually going to threaten this Heatran out, and Toxapex, who has enormous defenses, still taking steady amounts of damage from the Seismic Toss, decides to go for Knockoff, gets rid of Blissey's leftovers, but Blissey, with its tiny feet, even though it's very slow, outspeeds Toxapex, who is even slower, and is threatening to knock it out. And yeah, Blissey able to take out Toxapex with a Seismic Toss, and that's really good for Emerald, because Toxapex was really the only mon Vigilant had who could wall Scizor, which Emerald has been dutifully keeping in the back for a long, long time. And here we see the Scizor brought in, takes a Mach Punch, but it has Bullet Punch, it's faster than Conkeldurr, and it looks like Emerald Lasers is going to use this opportunity to sweep. Goes for the Bullet Punch, outspeeds Conkeldurr because Scizor is naturally faster, and both mons were using a move with +1 priority, and Scizor has the Brick Break, is able to knock out Heatran, and Emerald Lasers takes game 1. So going into game 2, we see same teams from both players, and the big what-if from last game was what would Garchomp have been able to do if it hadn't gotten burned the first turn. So I'm interested to see how both players adjust to playing around what was a fairly lucky streak from Emerald. Vigilant is going to lead with Conkeldurr into Emerald's Ferrothorn. Without the burn, Conkeldurr doesn't really threaten a ton of damage, but it's able to go for Knockoff as Emerald brings in his Azumarill and gets rid of his Life Orb. So that'll hurt Azumarill's damage output, and Conkeldurr gets the safe turn he needs to activate his Flame Orb. Vigilant Wall goes into Toxapex, and Azumarill goes for Knockoff. Able to get rid of Toxapex's Black Sludge, which will stop it from healing throughout the match. Now Emerald goes for... Emerald brings in Ferrothorn, and Toxapex goes for Knockoff. No items for anybody. No items allowed. But with every mon having their item gone, there'll be much less passive sustain in this game. Finally, Emerald decides to break the chain, goes for Stealth Rock as Vigilant switches in his Heatran. Heatran is going to set up his own Stealth Rock as Emerald brings in Blissey. So, Heatran almost certainly can't damage Blissey, so we'll see what Blissey does. It could fire off a Seismic Toss, it could go for Toxic, predicting another mon to come in. It really has a free turn to do whatever it wants. So, and Vigilant needs to consider what mon he's going to switch into Blissey. Opts for Garchomp here, takes a Seismic Toss, and Garchomp is able to damage Blissey a little bit with its rough skin. So Garchomp likely does threaten out Blissey, but it has quite high attack, but probably can't one-hit KO the Blissey. Goes for Earthquake, and gets a critical hit on the incoming Ferrothorn. That might be enough for a second Earthquake to knock out Ferrothorn. So we'll see if Emerald Lasers risks the range to try and get more chip damage onto Garchomp. If it goes for Knockoff or Power Whip, then Ferrothorn will be knocked out by Garchomp's own Rough Skin after taking an Earthquake. So we'll see what Ferrothorn chooses to do here. A safe play might be to switch out, but there's not really a good switch into Garchomp. seems like Vigilant decides to switch, brings in Pelipper as Emerald goes into Crobat. So, at this point, Crobat can Roost or heal, Roost or Brave Bird the Pelipper, while Pelipper has mostly a free turn here to defog away both Stealth Rock. And it can also go for U-turn and bring in the Armaldo, whose speed will be boosted by Rain. But Emerald has a really solid wall for it in Ferrothorn, so he might not want to do that until Ferrothorn's down. So Emerald does choose to switch in Rotom Wash and takes a Hurricane from Pelipper. So it seems like he was looking to get a bunch of damage on that Crobat, maybe knock it out after recoil from Brave Bird. But Rotom Wash is a fairly safe switch-in. Now Vigilant needs to play the 50-50. If he U-turns as Rotom goes for Will-O-Wisp, he's in great shape. But if he U-turns as Rotom goes for Volt Switch, he loses Pelipper. Whereas if he switches in Garchomp as Rotom goes for Will-O-Wisp, then he basically loses Garchomp. Decides to go for neither of those. Goes into Colquitter as Rotom goes for Will-O-Wisp, and takes the burn, but is already burned, so Will-O-Wisp fails. And now Colquitter is in here. Rotom is able to go for a Volt Switch, get a bit of chip damage as it switches out, but Emerald, again, needs to find something to switch into this Colquitter. Decides on Azumarill and takes a knockoff, so that was probably that was actually a reasonable switch for Emerald. Azumarill, already having its item knocked off, takes less damage from that knockoff, and can force Colquitter out here. So Vigilant has a fairly good wall in Toxapex, but it seems like Emerald's going to predict the Toxapex, goes into Rotom, and yes indeed, Vigilant goes into Toxapex. And we see here really the advantage of Stealth Rock. With so many forced switches, both teams are being damaged severely by having to continuously switch in new Mons to counter their opponent's Mon, and taking that Stealth Rock damage every time. So here Rotom is going to switch out using Volt Switch, brings in Ferrothorn, but it's also going to take damage from Stealth Rock. Toxapex goes for the Toxic, but Ferrothorn is of course immune. But now Vigilant is going to bring in his Armaldo, and it takes a quarter of its health from Stealth Rock because it's weak to Rock, being a bug type. And with that, plus the Leech Seed, plus Ferrothorn's Iron Barbs, can threaten high damage to Armaldo. We do see Emerald Lasers brings in his Scizor on Armaldo's X-Scissor, is able to take that fairly well, and now the rain is gone, and Scizor easily threatens Armaldo out with Bullet Punch. Vigilant chooses to bring in his Garchomp, as Scizor is able to set up the Swords Dance. So at this point, Garchomp is faster than Scizor, so Scizor is forced to go for Bullet Punch, and it's very close whether that'll knock out. It does knock out, so Garchomp does take the rest of its HP from a Swords Dance Scizor's Bullet Punch. Now, Toxapex coming back in, it healed from Regenerator. Regenerator heals a third of your health whenever you switch out of battle, and is a great answer to all this forced switching with Stealth Rock. So Scizor is going to use its +2 special attack, +2 attack, go for the U-turn, get a bit of damage in on Toxapex, as Emerald tries to bring in a counter. Decides on Crobat, but yeah, Toxapex is able to heal itself almost to full with Recover, and Crobat, it could have knocked out Toxapex with Brave Bird, but not after Recover, and Toxapex is now going to go for Scald and start fishing for those burns. Crobat will take this opportunity to heal itself up, but it goes for Super Fang. That does ignore, that would have ignored a potential burn, and does half damage to Toxapex, but even after a Super Fang, Brave Bird does absolutely nothing to Toxapex, as it's able to heal itself back up. So Crobat likely has to switch out here. Decides to go for Roost, takes another Scald, no Scald burn, so that's good for Emerald. But he can't keep dancing on this line forever. Toxapex will eventually get the burn, and that will severely cripple Crobat. Does decide to go into Ferrothorn, gets hit by Scald, and this time it burns, so Ferrothorn was, quite weak anyway, but getting the burn on it is good. It also has physical attacks, and being able to slowly wear it down will help. Toxapex goes for a knockoff. Ferrothorn had already lost its side into a Toxapex's knockoff, so doesn't take as much damage from that, and is able to get it with the Leech Seed and slowly start draining Toxapex, but Ferrothorn will fall here to passive damage. Ferrothorn going to set up a second Leech Seed, good switch, good call on the switch to Heatran, so is able to, even though it's burned and taking damage, keep itself sustained. Heatran goes for Flamethrower as Emerald switches in his Blissey, which, once again, will force Heatran out here after having taken some chip damage from Leech Seed. And Vigilant brings in his Toxapex as Blissey gonna go for the Seismic Toss, and with Toxapex's Black Sludge being knocked off and having to switch into Stealth Rock, it's in range of being knocked out by a second Seismic Toss. Yeah, here we go. Blissey once again dashing on its tiny feet, outspeeds the Toxapex and knocks it out with Seismic Toss. So Vigilant able to bring in his Conkeldurr, and it can definitely threaten high damage to the rest of Emerald's team, but it needs to predict correctly here. It can't afford to go for a Drain Punch into Crobat, and it can't afford to go for an Ice Punch into Azumarill. Brings in Ferrothorn, so Ferrothorn easily is knocked out here, but because it had so little health, Conkeldurr isn't able to heal that much off Drain Punch, and now Emerald has a free switch, and is able to bring in Crobat and force Conkeldurr out. So we see Vigilant brings in his Heatran. That's poor Heatran keeps getting crit by the Crobat, and after Stealth Rock and a crit Brave Bird, it's weakened quite a bit. But it still probably threatens to knock out this Crobat with Flamethrower if Crobat doesn't use Roost. Vigilant decides to switch in his Pelipper, able to set the rain up one last time, as Crobat heals up with Roost. And we'll see which moves they decide to go with. Crobat goes to the Brave Bird, is able to deal quite a bit of damage, as Vigilant goes for the Tailwind. That's a very interesting move. With Tailwind and Swift Swim, Armaldo will outspeed literally anything, but it didn't seem to need that. What I'm expecting is he'll use it to have Conkeldurr outspeed mons like Scizor and Rotom. As Crobat does knock out Pelipper, Vigilant brings in his Armaldo, which can get a pretty big hit in here. Ferrothorn, which was Armaldo's biggest counter, is down, but Armaldo we've seen have Life Orb, and taking damage from the Stealth Rock means it only has 2 attacks left in it, and really needs to make those count. So Emerald Lasers is going to bring in Rotom. Armaldo goes for the Stone Edge and does knock out the Rotom, but that was one mon down, and Emerald brings in his Scizor, and Scizor at this point, with Bullet Punch, is able to knock out Armaldo. Vigilant decides it would be better use for later, so switches in Heatran, and Scizor sort of has a bit of the same problem. It's quite low after having switched it to Stealth Rock a couple of times and taking Life Orb recoil, so it only has 2 good attacks left in it. Crits Heatran one more time, that crit did not matter, and is able to take it out, but Vigilant brings in his Armaldo, which immediately gets knocked out by Stealth Rock, and in comes Conkeldurr, which unfortunately is not faster than Scizor and will fall to a Bullet Punch. So Emerald Lasers, despite losing his Scizor at the same time, is able to take out Vigilant in 2 games. Next up we have Confused Muse versus the person who ran the tournament, Renrink. Both of them are bringing fun and interesting teams with a lot of Pokemon you don't commonly see. So Ren is able to lead with Tyranitar, while Muse brings in Corsola. This is a good matchup for Ren, as Tyranitar threatens high damage with a Dark-type move, but Corsola could burn it, could set up plenty of things it could do. It decides to burn the Tyranitar, and even though Tyranitar sets up Stealth Rock, which is great for Ren, its offense is crippled for the rest of the game. Unless we see Heal Bell on Umbreon. So, yeah, that Earthquake did absolutely nothing, as Muse's Corsola is able to also set up the Stealth Rock. So Ren probably has to switch the Tyranitar into something else here, which could get burned again, or take a Strength Sap. Ren decides to bring in Scizor, which takes, once again, 100 damage from Corsola's Nightshade. Corsula is another mod who has really, really poor offensive stats, and so relies on set damage moves and passive damage like Nightshade to take things out. Scizor is able to set up a Sword Stance here, as Corsula goes for another Nightshade. And here Ren reveals Roost on Scizor, which means it's going to be able to outpace Corsola's damage with its healing, which is very good for Ren, but Scizor really doesn't want to take a Will-O-Wisp. Scizor outspeeding that Corsula, goes for the knockoff, knocks off its Eviolite, but Corsula survives the hit. Just so bulky is Galarian Corsula when it crits with an Eviolite, and is able to burn the Scizor before it falls. And as a literal last-ditch effort, Curse the Body disables Scizor's Bullet Punch. So now Muse can bring in a mon that's faster than Scizor, like this Mimikyu, and threaten it out or set up herself. We do see Mimikyu setting up the Sword Stance as Scizor goes for Roost. The Cursed Body disabling Bullet Punch will wear off eventually, but Ren doesn't want to give Muse too many opportunities to set up the Sword Stance. We see Mimikyu goes for Shadow Claw, does easily over half to Scizor, but gets hit by Knockoff. As we've seen before, Mimikyu has the ability to Disguise, which allows it to take the first hit against it without taking any actual damage. And with Bullet Punch disabled, Mimikyu can knock Scizor out here. So Ren decides she wants to save Scizor, goes into Tyranitar, takes a Shadow Claw, doesn't do that much, but Mimikyu almost certainly carries Play Rough, which will threaten Tyranitar out. So we'll see if Ren wants to double switch, or just let Tyranitar faint, as it's not that useful if it's burned. Mimikyu does go for Play Rough, Ren leaves the Tyranitar in, and Mimikyu is able to take it out. But now, Ren goes into Excadrill, so similar to the rain teams we've seen, Excadrill has the ability Sand Rush, which doubles its speed under the Sandstorm, and that'll allow it to outspeed this Mimikyu. So Mimikyu, alright, it could have gone for a Shadow Sneak to get some chip damage, but Excadrill does just go for Iron Head, knocks out the Mimikyu. And, alright, we see Muse brings in Gardevoir. A really interesting play there. Gardevoir has the ability Trace, and it's able to copy Excadrill's Sand Rush. So normally Excadrill would easily outspeed and knock out Gardevoir, but with Gardevoir copying the Sand Rush, it's naturally faster, so it's able to go for a Psychic and get some damage onto Excadrill, while Excadrill sets up a Sword Stance. So Gardevoir goes for a second Psychic, Excadrill is able to resist it, but takes about half from both of those, and Tyranitar is not carrying Smooth Rock, the item that extends Sandstorm, so at this point the Sandstorm has worn off. Muse does bring in Dragonite, as it doesn't take Stealth Rock damage, we know that it has heavy-duty boots, and Excadrill takes this opportunity to get up Rapid Spin as Ren's Dragonite sets up the Dragon Dance. Even though it was at +2, Dragonite has the ability Multi-Scale, which allows it to take half damage from the first attack against it, but Excadrill was able to break it with a Rapid Spin and then knock it out, and then knock Dragonite out with Iron Head. So this Excadrill is really rampaging through Muse's team. Muse brings in Togekiss. It also has heavy-duty boots, as evidenced by it not taking damage from Stealth Rock, but it will probably be one-hit KO'd by Iron Head. You know, at +2, super effective. Yep, Excadrill goes for another Iron Head and is able to knock Togekiss out in a single hit. So Muse is down to just her last Pokemon, Lucario. Lucario can run a few different sets. Yeah, it could have had Vacuum Wave, but Excadrill, with the speed boost from Rapid Spin, does go first and knocks it out in a single hit with Earthquake. So Ren takes that in convincing fashion. Next up, we'll go to Game 2. And we see the same leads from both players, Muse leading with Corsula, while Ren leads with Tyranitar. And the exact same start. Tyranitar gets up the Stealth Rock, Corsula burns it. So we'll see how this game diverges after this first turn. Corsula probably also wants to get up Stealth Rock, but yeah, Ren uses this opportunity to switch in the Scizor. Let's see what Muse does at this point. I would like to see immediately going for the Will-O-Wisp, and does go for the Will-O-Wisp, but unfortunately only 75% accuracy, misses the burn at that point while taking the knockoff Normally, knockoff's power is reduced once your opponent has lost their item, but if you knock off the Eviolite, that provides such a big defensive boost that the second knockoff would probably knock it out. Muse decides to bring in Dragonite as Scizor sits at the Sword Stance, and here the Sandstorm does just a little bit of damage to Dragonite and breaks its multi-scale. So Dragonite goes for Dragon Dance, and Scizor gets a critical hit with knockoff. Dragonite barely survived, and thankfully this was the turn where Sandstorm ends. Muse was able to get the Dragon Dance, but of course Scizor is able to knock it out with Bullet Punch. Muse brings in her Mimikyu, but at this point, without Bullet Punch being disabled, Ren has a fairly easy path to knocking out this Mimikyu. We do see the knockoff able to get rid of Mimikyu's life orb, and Mimikyu can at most get off one Shadow Sneak before it's knocked out by Bullet Punch. Oh, goes for the Shadow Claw. Seems like Ren wasn't going for the Bullet Punch. Goes for the knockoff again, I guess predicting the switch. But at this point, Scizor is able to go for Bullet Punch and knocks Mimikyu out. So, once again, Muse brings in Togekiss. Has not been having good matchups, but just barely survives a +2 Bullet Punch, and with Flamethrower is able to knock out that Scizor. So that's a really good play for Muse. Keeps her basically alive in this game, as Scizor would have been able to rampage through the rest of her team. Ren brings in Zeraora, who is one of the fastest mons in all of OU. Can easily outspeed this Togekiss, goes for the Plasma Fists, and knocks out the tiny amount of HP it had left. Muse brings in Gardevoir, and once again we see an interesting use for Trace. It copies a Volt Absorb, which means that Zeraora won't be able to use Plasma Fists against it. So we'll see how it's able to make use of that. This might even force Zeraora out. Gardevoir goes for the Moonblast. By outspeeding Zeraora, it's revealed that it's Choice Guard, and Ren goes for the Plasma Fist into Gardevoir, but because of Trace, it's able to heal up from the Volt Absorb. It's stole from Zeraora. Yeah, and Gardevoir goes for the second Moonblast. He's able to knock out Zeraora, but we know that Gardevoir is locked into Moonblast, so Ren is able to bring in Excadrill. Can probably go for Rapid Spin, boost its speed and then sweep the rest of Muse's team. We'll see how this goes. We do see the Moonblast does about a third. Excadrill goes for Sword Stance, so Muse is going to be able to get off one more Moonblast here. And if Lucario has Vacuum Wave, it might be able to knock out this Excadrill. As we see, at +2, Ironhead easily knocked out Gardevoir. And we also see the advantage of running Leftovers on your sweeper. Excadrill was able to weather those 2 hits with Moonblast while setting up, and now is quite a bit healthier than it would have been if it had, say, Life Orb. Ironhead is able to knock out this Corsola, and now Lucario comes in, and it really needs to have exactly Vacuum Wave to have a chance of knocking out this Excadrill. But if it does, it actually has a pretty good matchup against the rest of Ren's team. Goes for the Extreme Speed here, which does mean that Excadrill knocks it out. So Ren is able to take that 2-0. And we're going to move on to the final match of the round of 8, which is Barrow versus Z. And let's see what these players have got. So Barrow is leading with a fairly standard balanced team, whereas Z has a very physically based offensive team. We also see 3 potential leads on Z's side. Mamoswine, Mienshao, and Regieleki are all great leads that threaten out a lot of Pokemon and do well with free turns. Barrel is going to lead with Rillaboom, as Z chooses to lead with Victini, and this is a very good matchup for Z. Victini threatens Rillaboom out immediately with V-Create, and can use the momentum from this to go for U-Turn. So, we'll see what these players decide to do. Victini could go for a Bolt Strike, it could just go for V-Create and hope Barrel doesn't switch out. Barrel brings in his Heatran, as Victini goes for U-Turn, so Heatran takes barely any damage from that, but Victini is able to get the switch in that Z wants, brings in Mamoswine. Mamoswine threatens Heatran out with Earthquake, but grassy terrain from Rillaboom, which was set on the first turn, does weaken Earthquake. Barrel decides to switch back in Rillaboom, and Mamoswine does go for Earthquake, but with the damage reduction from grassy terrain, Rillaboom takes that fairly well. Now, Mamoswine threatens Rillaboom out with an Ice move, but Rillaboom has Grassy Glide and can outspeed and knock out Mamoswine. Z decides to bring in Ferrothorn and takes a critical hit from Rillaboom's knockoff. So we do see Rillaboom goes for the superpower with the Life Orb boost and the extra damage from the crit knockoff. It's able to knock out that Ferrothorn. So that'll really unlock Rillaboom to be able to sweep later, as Ferrothorn was Z's only great switch-in to repeated hits from Grassy Glide, but Rillaboom is quite low at this point, and with lower defenses really needs to switch out. So Barrel is going to bring in Landorus, as Z's Mienshao goes for the Fake Out. It takes minimal damage, and now Mienshao goes for U-turn, as Z can bring in whatever matchup he wants into this Lando. So Z brings in Mamoswine, as Landorus also goes for U-turn, and this is the case where being slower is actually a really big advantage. Because Landorus was slower, it was able to get the U-turn off second, and therefore Barrow was able to bring in the Pokemon he wanted after seeing what Z chose. So goes into Rillaboom, goes for Grassy Glide, and yeah, Z doesn't really want to switch anything into a Rillaboom's Grassy Glide. It's just going to let Mamoswine faint. Z decides to bring in his Victini, which will threaten out this Ferrothorn. Barrel brings in Heatran, gets crit by Victini's Bolt Strike, but still doesn't do a ton of damage. So Victini Victini decides to go for a V-Crit, but Heatran does have Flash Fire, able to be immune to that damage, as Heatran is also able to get up the Stealth Rock. So Z, seeing that Victini wasn't able to damage the Heatran, is going to bring in Regieleki, but with Heatran's Flash Fire boost he got from tanking that V-Create, he's able to knock out Regieleki in a single hit with Magma Storm. So, and Z is really scrambling at this point, needs to find some way to get damage in. It is going to bring in this Mimikyu, which we've seen has Disguise, which allows it to ignore one hit. Heatran goes for the Magma Storm and misses as Mimikyu sets up a Swords Dance. So that'll allow it to be much more threatening. Barrel switches in his Ferrothorn as Mimikyu sets up a second Swords Dance. Now has tripled attack. We'll see what kind of offense is able to get done with that. Goes for the Shadow Claw, does easily over half to Ferrothorn, but takes quite a bit of damage from Iron Barb's Rocky Helmet and its Life Orb. As Ferrothorn goes for knockoff, is able to get rid of its Life Orb and break its Disguise. Mimikyu does go for a second Shadow Claw, does knock out the Ferrothorn, but takes even more damage from Iron Barbs and Rocky Helmet. And Barrel brings in Rillaboom, and it might be able to take Mimikyu's Shadow Sneak, and just barely is able to take Mimikyu's Shadow Sneak, knocks it out with Grassy Glide, but its own Life Orb knocks it out. So both Mons die here. And we'll see what both players decide to switch in. Z brings in Victini, as Barrel brings in Dragapult. Victini, not taking Stealth Rock damage here, reveals that it has Boots instead of a Choice Scarf, which means Dragapult is able to outspeed and knock it out. And Z brings in Mienshao, goes for Fake Out, but that doesn't affect Dragapult. And Dragapult is able to get the 2 KO with Shadow Ball. So Barrel takes that one in fairly convincing fashion. Game 2, we see a different team from Z, some very interesting Mons. Shedinja and Zoroark, 2 Mons you don't see very often, and really good at playing mind games against Barrel, who has run back the same team. So we'll see how these two players adapt, and whether Z's very unorthodox team is able to succeed in its mind games. So Z leads with Toxicroak, which is a great matchup into Barrel's Heatran, so Barrel decides to switch into Landorus. Landorus is able to go to get off the Intimidate and take the Cross Chop very well. Here, Z brings in his Shedinja as Landorus goes for a U-turn, but because of Shedinja's Wonder Guard, it's immune to that, and that also cancels U-turn's secondary effect of allowing him to switch out. So we do see Toxic from the Lando. It does hit, and because Shedinja only has a single hit point, Wonder Guard does not protect you from passive damage, so the Toxic knocks out Shedinja in a single hit after it misses with a Will-O-Wisp. So that was a great turn out of Knights through a barrel. Z brings in his Slowbro, who does take a Toxic from Lando, but is able to burn it with Scald. And we see Slowbro going for Protect here, blocking Landorus' U-turn, which means that they both take more damage from their status conditions. So, Lando is able to get off the U-turn here, gets a critical hit, but does barely nothing. And Slowbro is able to set up the Future Sight as Barrel switches in his Ferrothorn. So Barrel really wants to make sure that Ferrothorn or Weavile is on the field once this Future Sight resolves. Z goes into his Corviknight as Ferrothorn sets up spikes. And Barrel brings in his Heatran as Corviknight goes for Body Press and gets a critical hit, dealing over half to Heatran, and Heatran takes the Future Sight, so it's quite weak. It'll probably be knocked out by a second Body Press. We do see Z goes for it, but Barrel switches back into Ferrothorn, able to take that Body Press fairly well and damage Corviknight with Iron Arms and Lucky Helmet. So, we'll see what Corviknight decides to do. With Iron Defense and Roost, Corviknight can beat Ferrothorn by buffing itself up so much, healing, and then just going for Body Press, but we'll see if Corviknight has those three moves. Does go for Brave Bird here, and seems to take more damage back from Iron Barb's Rocky Helmet and the Recoil than it actually dealt in damage. Ferrothorn is able to go for Leech Seed and get even more chip damage. Corviknight here takes a turn off to go for Roost, which is able to heal itself up, but Ferrothorn goes for Knockoff and is able to get rid of Corviknight's leftovers. Corv goes for Roost again, and Ferrothorn is able to keep setting up the spikes. This Corviknight has not revealed Defog. It might have it, but if it does, that means it has no chance of beating Ferrothorn. Barrel makes the switch to Dragapult on the Body Press, is able to ignore it because he's Ghost type, and Dragapult is able to knock out Ferrothorn almost with Flamethrower. Corviknight survives, and the last hit does before the Leech Seed knocks it out is Defog away to Spikes, so at least Z doesn't have to worry about the spikes as he brings in his Toxicroak. Barrel switches in his Landorus, and Toxicroak goes for Dark Pulse, which basically indicates that this is actually Zoroark. So Landorus is probably fairly threatened out here. Seems like Z overpredicted a little bit, goes for the Sludge Bomb, which doesn't do that much to Lando, and Barrel goes for the U-turn. He's able to break Zoroark's disguise and bring in Dragapult. Because Zoroark has switched moves, Barrel knows that he does not Choice Scarf, and Dragapult is naturally faster, so he's able to go for a second U-turn and knock out that Zoroark. Now Barrel has to choose which Mon he wants to switch in. Does decide to go for Ferrothorn, and Z can bring in likely his Toxapex Toxicroak here. Yeah, we do see Toxicroak, so Barrel might want to switch out, might want to stay in and get a Leech Seed off. Does decide to go into Lando, is able to get the Intimidate off, and reads the Earthquake fairly well, dodging it with Lando. And we see a fairly interesting move from Toxicroak, Foul Play, using the opponent's attack, and is actually not affected by an opponent's burn. So it's able to knock out the Lando, but Barrel is able to bring in his Dragapult, and Dragapult is almost certainly faster than Toxicroak. Now Toxicroak might be able to turn this matchup on its head if it has Sucker Punch. Some Toxicroak carry it, so we'll see if that's able to knock out Dragapult. Here comes the Draco Meteor, and it seems like Toxapex does not have Sucker Punch, and Draco Meteor is able to knock the Toxicroak out in a single hit. Z brings in Zeraora, which is 1 point of speed faster than Dragapult, so Barrel is forced to switch out here. Gets hit by Knockoff, which does some recoil damage with Iron Barbs and Rocky Helmet, but is able to get rid of Ferrothorn's Rocky Helmet. Zeraora goes for Close Combat, is able to severely weaken Ferrothorn, but Ferrothorn is able to chip away a little bit more with Leech Seed. Barrel switches in Rillaboom, which takes another Close Combat, but that does less than half, and with the Rillaboom at this point is faster than both of Z's Mons and is able to knock them both out with Grassy Glide. So Z brings in Slowbro and actually does survive a Grassy Glide, but because he switched it in, Barrel is going to be able to get a second attack off before Slowbro can do anything, and does finish it off with Grassy Glide. And unfortunately, there's one more turn of Grassy Terrain left, where Barrel can still have priority on the Grassy Glide, and is able to knock out all 6 of Z's Pokemon. And Barrel is able to take the final match of the round of 8. So now we're moving on to the round of 4. We have Lundcraft versus Emerald Lasers. Let's see how both these players adapt to seeing what their opponent's teams are. Lundcraft, once again running the Rain. We see both players running the teams that have carried them this far through the tournament. Lundcraft again having to run through a Ferrothorn that will pose a big threat to his team, and Emerald Lasers is going to lead with it, while Lundcraft leads with Pelipper. And once again, Lundcraft showing no fear, switching his Seismitoad in on a Ferrothorn, as Ferrothorn does get up the Stealth Rock. Seismitoad goes for Focus Blast, does over half to Ferrothorn, but Ferrothorn does go for Power Whip and knocks out Seismitoad. So Ferrothorn is quite heavily damaged, which is good for Lundcraft, but that's one of his big Rain Abusers down. He is going to go into his other one, Barraskewda. Ferrothorn seems just low enough that he might be able to risk knocking it out with Liquidation, which would also do much more damage to anything else he switched into, or he could guarantee the KO with Close Combat, but lose a lot of momentum if Emerald Laser switches in Crobat. So we'll see what he decides to do here. Lasers, for his part, probably wants to preserve the Rotom, and yes indeed, he brings in his Rotom Wash as Barraskewda goes for a Close Combat, and it definitely looks like it'll be a 2-hit KO. But not seeing any item. We know it's not Boots because it switched into Stealth Rock, and we know it's not Life Orb. Emerald Lasers can pretty much assume that this is Choice Banded, which means he can make an informed switch and send in something else to take a Close Combat. Decides on Azumarill. Here comes a second Close Combat, and it doesn't do that much. Barraskewda relies a little bit on the Rain for the power boost it needs to really muscle through walls, and here Azumarill is able to use its resistances in pretty good bulk to take the hit. Big hit there. Lundcraft brings in Zapdos, which is a good offensive matchup into Azumarill, but Azumarill is able to go for the knockoff, get Zapdos down pretty low enough to the point where its own Aqua Jet will knock it out. So now Lundcraft is going to bring in his own Ferrothorn, which is a pretty good matchup into Azumarill unless it has something like Superpower. And we do see, yeah, Azumarill reveals Superpower as its last move, and is able to one-hit KO Ferrothorn just after the Stealth Rock damage, and that's really, really good for Emerald. Lundcraft really running out of mons he can use here. Brings in his Moltres, and with Azumarill's attack being dropped, he has to switch it out, but he has Blissey still, which is a strong matchup into Moltres, being able to take not very much damage. Moltres does go for Taunt, and is able to block Blissey's Toxic, but it would probably need Taunt, Nasty Plot, and Roost to be able to actually beat this Blissey. So let's see what his moveset is. Lund is going to go into Pelipper here, get the Rain back up, while Blissey goes for a Seismic Toss, able to do a consistent amount of damage. And against Pelipper, who can't run Boots because it needs to have Damp Rock, that's quite important. Pelipper is able to defog and get rid of the hazards as Emerald Lasers brings in Rotom. But now Lundcraft needs to think of which Mon he's going to sack to Rotom's Volt Switch. Rotom actually goes for Rest here, able to heal itself up, and wake up immediately with the Chesto Berry, while Pelipper goes for Roost. I would call that a win for Lasers, though, as Pelipper will still be knocked out by a Volt Switch, and now Rotom's at full health. And yes, indeed, Luncraft stays in, doesn't want to risk either of his big damage dealers being knocked out by Rotom, so just lets Pelipper faint, which means he has 5 turns of rain that he really needs to make something happen in. Emerald Lasers is going to bring in Scizor, so I'm expecting we'll see Barraskewda. Yes, we do. Scizor could get a little bit of chip damage off with Bullet Punch, but Barraskewda definitely outspeeds, and we do see the Liquidation knocks out Scizor in a single hit, showing the double power increase from Rain and probably Choice Band, both multiplying his damage by 50%. Goes for a second Liquidation. Rotom resists, but is able to tank the hit fairly well and get knocked out by, and knocks out Barraskewda with Volt Switch. Luncraft brings in his Moltres, who's able to take Azumarill down with Hurricane, but now, yeah, Emerald Lasers has Crobat, which is faster than Moltres, and will likely be able to just knock it out with Breakthrough. Here it goes, and Moltres does actually survive. Goes for the Hurricane, and Crobat lives it just barely. I've been really surprised by how defensive that Crobat has been, taking several hits. So let's go into Game 2, and Luncraft switching up his team here, bringing a more balanced offensive team, while Emerald Lasers is still running the same. So the important mons in this matchup have completely shifted. Ferrothorn now has a really easy counter in Blacephalon that Luncraft can bring in and threaten damage. Here, Emerald Lasers is led with it against Luncraft's Weavile, and Weavile goes for knockoff and is able to get rid of Ferrothorn's leftovers, while Emerald Lasers uses this opportunity to get Stealth Rock up. Looking at that damage, it was probably not Choice Banded, so I'm expecting it to have Boots. Luncraft is going to bring in Tornadus as Ferrothorn gets a Leech Seed. Tornadus does threaten out Ferrothorn with a Heat Wave, but Ferrothorn's job is mostly done here. It got some chip damage, it got rocks up. We're probably going to see Tornadus defog the rocks away, or go for U-turn, predicting a switch. Both players considering their moves here. Alright, goes into Blissey, which is a very safe switch into Tornadus. Tornadus does go for the defog, able to clear the Stealth Rocks away, and now it'll likely switch out either directly or using U-turn to a Mon that can more easily handle Blissey. We do see Melmetal able to come in, dodge the Blissey's Toxic, because of course it's Steel type, it can't be poisoned, and Melmetal probably can't one-hit KO the Blissey, but Emerald Lasers isn't going to risk it. Oh, revealing Superpower, that definitely would have knocked out Blissey, and does quite a bit to Ferrothorn. These are both very slow Pokemon. I believe Melmetal sometimes runs enough speed to outspeed Ferrothorn, so we'll see which one is faster. Emerald Lasers is going to go into Crobat, predicting another Superpower, does make the correct move. Now Crobat can probably won't take much damage now that Melmetal is at half of its attack, but can't threaten Melmetal in return, except with maybe Super Fang. Does go for the Super Fang. Luncraft brings in Slowbro, which does take half its health, which is quite good, but Slowbro does have Slack Off to heal itself, and it has Regenerator. Luncraft makes a double switch here, goes into Weavile, as Emerald Lasers goes for Taunt. So Taunt was a good move by Crobat, but Weavile doesn't care about Taunt that much, it's probably just going to attack, and it immediately threatens out this Crobat. So we'll see what Emerald Lasers switches into it. Yeah, Weavile could go for the Triple Axle, that would deal severe damage to Crobat, that would knock it out in one hit, but if Emerald Lasers brings in Ferrothorn, it'll be taking quite a bit from recoil. It could alternatively go for knockoff and try and get rid of the item of something on the switch. Emerald Lasers is going to go into Rotom, and we do see the Triple Axle from Weavile. Does get all 3 hits, but with Rotom's great defense and resisting the move, it looks like it won't even be a 2-hit KO. So we'll likely see Weavile switch out here. And that gives Emerald Lasers the advantage, as he's able to go for a Volt Switch. and Lungcraft's only mon to block bolts, which is Garchomp, who does not want to take a Will-O-Wisp. Weavile does stay in. It goes for the knockoff and gets rid of Rotom's Chesto Berry, and Rotom attempts to go for the Will-O-Wisp but misses. That was a massive, massive play. Hitting that Will-O-Wisp would cripple Weavile for the rest of the game, but here Weavile can threaten Rotom out as it will knock it out with a second knockoff. Brings in Scizor, and Weavile goes for the Ice Shard. I'm not sure what he was predicting there. He knew he was faster than Rotom, so able to get a bit of chip damage onto Scizor, and Weavile would have to go Ice Shard to out-prioritize Scizor's Bullet Punch, so decides to just switch into Garchomp as Scizor sets up Swords Dance. Almost certainly Garchomp will be able to take a +2 Bullet Punch from full, but without a Fire move it won't be able to knock out Scizor, so let's see what both these players go for. I'm imagining one of these Mons is going to fall this turn. Both players debating their options. It's usually, like, it feels like a shame to waste your setup Mon after he's taken a turn, but it is often correct just to switch out, because here you see, goes for the Bullet Punch, does Scizor, but it's not able to do enough damage to Garchomp, and Garchomp goes for the Fire Blast, is able to knock out Scizor. So that's the first knockout of the game, and looking pretty good for Lund, as Emerald Lasers has been repeatedly leaning on that Scizor as his late game damage. Emerald Lasers isn't able to bring in Azumarill, and this team doesn't have a great switch into it. We do see Melmetal coming in, gets hit by Knockoff, and knocks off his Assault Vest. Assault Vest is a really good item on Melmetal, just letting it tank better, improving its poor special defense, and it usually only wants to attack anyway. Seeing that knockoff damage, Azumarill might be able to knock it out with a Waterfall, but if Melmetal stays in, it can probably knock Azumarill out with double Iron Bash. Emerald Lasers doesn't want to risk it, switches in Crobat, and we do see the double Iron Bash. First hit is a critical hit, I don't even think that mattered. Knocks out the Crobat in a single hit. Melmetal has absolutely massive damage, and double Iron Bash, having effectively 120 base power, hits incredibly hard. So Emerald Lasers now needs to bring in something to try and deal with this Melmetal. It's also got fairly good matchups here, where it threatens out Blissey, it threatens out Ferrothorn. Emerald Lasers does go into Azumarill, hoping to outspeed, hoping to knock it out with Waterfall. Lundcraft doesn't want to take that chance, goes into Slowbro as Azumarill goes for Superpower. And we see Rocky Helmet on the Slowbro. Foregoes a little bit of sustain from leftovers in order to better punish physical attackers, and here gets some more chip on Azumarill before forcing it out, and is able to burn Ferrothorn, while Ferrothorn misses the Leech Seed. So this has really turned into a strong play for Lund. Slowbro is going to heal itself with Slack Off as Ferrothorn finally hits the Leech Seed, but gets hit by Future Sight, which knocks it out since it has such low HP. Whichever Mon Emerald Lasers brings in is going to benefit from the healing from that Leech Seed, but he brings in Rotom and is going to immediately Volt Switch out. Probably into Blissey. I don't see him bringing in Azumarill. Does bring in Azumarill into the Slowbro, as Slowbro sets up Future Sight again. And this might have been the opening that Emerald Lasers needed. Slowbro was really Lundcraft's best physically defensive Mon. Let's see how much damage Azumarill can get out. Well, switching, going for Superpower into that Tornadus isn't a good start. That'll probably force Azumarill out. At least Emerald Lasers has a good switch in Blissey, which we do see bringing in here. Hurricane basically bounces off Blissey, and even though it got a critical hit, so does Future Sight. So Blissey can take the opportunity here to get some damage in on this Tornadus. We do see Tornadus U-turning out. Blissey's much weaker physical defense means that the U-turn does a reasonable amount of damage, and Lundcraft goes into Blacephalon, which blocks Blissey's Seismic Toss since it's a Ghost type. And we do see the trick So Blacephalon giving Blissey its Choice Scarf, realizing that it doesn't need a Scarf to outspeed any member of Emerald Laser's team. And now that Blissey has a Choice Scarf and has used Soft Boiled, it can only use Soft Boiled for the rest of the... until it switches out, which allows Luncraft to switch into Mon to break it. Goes into Melmetal as Emerald Laser switches in Rotom. Luncraft double switches into Garchomp, takes a Hydro Pump. Melmetal, without its Assault Vest, it had gotten knocked off, probably would have been knocked out by Rotom, as its special defense is very poor. Garchomp does threaten out Rotom here, and Luncraft is going to use that opportunity to get Stealth Rock up. A bit late for Stealth Rock, but it always helps, as Luncraft is able to switch in Blacephalon, and he knows this Blissey is Choice Scarfed, and now that it's locked into Seismic Toss, it can't do anything. So, Blacephalon goes for the Flamethrower, does basically nothing, but as long as Blissey's stuck here, Choice Scarf locked into Seismic Toss, it can just keep going for Flamethrower until Blissey knocks out. And it looks like Emerald Lasers has conceded to that fate and is just going to let Blissey faint to get a free switch. And one more Flamethrower should do it. And with the burn damage that Luncraft was able to get, that knocks Blissey out. So Emerald Lasers is really going to have to make something happen with this Azumarill. Goes for the Aqua Jet, does knock out Blacephalon. So that's one down. But Luncraft has both Tornadus Therian and Melmetal who can potentially take a hit. Here's the superpower. That does knock out Melmetal, but lowering Azumarill's attack means it'll probably need to switch out, and then take Stealth Rock damage on the way back in. Luncraft brings in Weavile, which is faster than Azumarill, and can probably live in Aqua Jet. Emerald Laser's deciding if this is the turn he wants to switch in Rotom, and basically sacrifice that to try and to reset Azumarill's attack drop, and decides not to, goes for the Aqua Jet, is able to get reasonable damage on the Weavile, but loses Azumarill to a knockoff, and at this point, Rotom comes in, takes Stealth Rock damage, and Weavile, a bit of a comedy of errors here, Weavile goes for Ice Shard, which he would have been faster just with knockoff, and Rotom misses the Hydro Pump, but Luncraft is able to take that, which means we're going on to Game 3. Both players are running the team they ran in Game 2, so both of them liking the adjustments they made, and we see the same lead again. Weavile into Ferrothorn, and Weavile is able to knock off Ferrothorn's leftovers while Ferrothorn sets up the rocks. I would call that a win for Emerald Lasers, unless Luncraft is able to bring in his Tornadus. And we see a bit of a variation here. Weavile is going to set up the Swords Dance as Ferrothorn gets up, sets Leech Seed on it. So we see another knockoff, does just barely under half, but Leech Seed's going to heal Ferrothorn up to the range where knockoff won't knock it out, and Ferrothorn gets up the Toxic, which means Weavile, even if it goes for... Weavile would have been knocked out there if it went for Triple Axle by the passive damage. So Luncraft is going to switch in Blacephalon, which, you see, its defenses are so poor, and Fire-type switching into Stealth Rock, it's almost down just from switching into a Mon that it ostensibly has a great matchup against. So Emerald Lasers does need to find something to switch into Blacephalon. The obvious choice is Blissey, but he really doesn't want to take Trick. So we'll see if he risks switching Blissey into a Trick Choice Scarf. But nothing else on his team can really take a Shadow Ball. Decides to go into Azumarill, and Blacephalon goes for Overheat, which we've seen last game that Blacephalon was Choice Scarf, so it doesn't do that much. Now, Blacephalon does outspeed Azumarill, but Azumarill with the Aqua Jet forces Blacephalon out here. We do see Luncraft brings in Tornadus, and Azumarill gets a critical hit with Aqua Jet. That's probably not enough to put Tornadus into KO range of a second one, but if Tornadus wants to defog away these hazards, it needs to stay in here and go for defog and probably faint. Azumarill is going to switch out, Emerald Lasers brings in his Rotom, and Tornadus is able to safely get the defog off. So that's helpful for Lund. And here's a big play. Lund switches in Melmetal, and Rotom Wash is able to burn it. We've seen it, Melmetal holds an Assault Vest, which means that it only has attacking moves. Assault Vest locks you into only using attacking moves, so that burn will severely cripple it, and Rotom is able to switch out, and you see that burn coming into play immediately. Crobat comes in, and probably would have taken almost his entire health bar if Melmetal wasn't burned, but here is able to take that double Iron Bash. Luncraft is going to bring in Weavile, which does not have much time left as it's on a timer with Toxic, but it can definitely threaten out this Crobat. Emerald Lasers brings in Ferrothorn, and we see Ice Shard from Weavile, which does minor damage, and thankfully does not make contact, so doesn't trigger Iron Barbs. Luncraft rather, brings in Garchomp to threaten Ferrothorn out. Garchomp has revealed Fire Blast in the last game, so Emerald Lasers need to be worried about that. Does go for it, and is able to knock out the Ferrothorn. So that's progress for Luncraft, and that means that its Weavile won't be hard-walled by that Ferrothorn. Now Emerald Lasers needs to bring something in to take on this Garchomp. He does have the Leech Seed that the Ferrothorn was able to set up, so that will help if he wants to try and trade hits with it. But the rest of his team is threatened out quite severely by Garchomp. Goes into Rotom Wash. Garchomp does not want to take Will-O-Wisp here, so he might just switch out, especially to get rid of that Leech Seed. Yeah. Luncraft brings in Slowbro, and Rotom goes for the Will-O-Wisp, burns the Slowbro, which isn't the biggest deal. Passive damage is always a problem, especially since Slowbro is not running leftovers. But he immediately double switches back to Garchomp, able to block the Rotom's Volt Switch. And we'll see how these two players dance around each other. Rotom can cripple Garchomp with Will-O-Wisp, but does not want to take hits here because its only real method of healing itself is with Rest, and if it sets up Rest, Luncraft can switch in a powerful threat and get moving. So we see once again the stare down. If Rotom also goes for Volt Switch while Slowbro goes for Teleport, that's a big advantage to Luncraft. Rotom's going to try for the burn again, but Slowbro stays in this time, sets up the Future Sight. So in 2 turns, Emerald Lasers will be taking a big hit, and really only Blissey would be okay with taking a Future Sight. Scizor at least resists it, and Emerald Lasers does bring it in, but Slowbro is able to go for the Teleport and brings in Blacephalon. This is a bit of a question of whether Bullet Punch will KO, and yes it does. Blacephalon's defenses are just that poor that it takes 30% from a resisted Bullet Punch. And we do see Future Sight dealing a reasonable amount of damage. Now in comes Garchomp, who outspeeds and threatens the KO with Fire Blast, but we might see Luncraft predict here. And yes, Emerald Lasers brings in his Rotom as Garchomp sets up Toxic. Not a move you'd expect to see on like a fast offensive Pokemon, but there's a lot of Mons that just wall Garchomp, and using Toxic it's able to eventually threaten them all. So Luncraft brings in Slowbro, who takes Volt Switch from Rotom, and Scizor goes for U-turn, but it's going to take some damage from Rough Skin as Garchomp comes in. Emerald Laser's doing his best to pivot around Luncraft's threats, but taking quite a bit of residual damage here. We see Lasers going back into Rotom. He could try and burn the Garchomp, he could throw out a Hydro Pump, or he could Volt Switch hoping that Slowbro comes in. Instead, Luncraft goes into Melmetal, which can, of course, take the Will-O-Wisp, but Rotom can deal some reasonable damage to it with Volt Switch, or try and take it out with Hydro Pump. Luncraft really wants to just get rid of this Melmetal, as it's not really useful now that it's burned. And Rotom takes this opportunity to go for the rest, restore its toxic poison, and wake up immediately with Chest Down. And we see now Rotom Wash attacking. Melmetal reveals Thunder Punch, which would be dealing reasonable damage if he wasn't burned, but here is basically nothing. Luncraft decides he wants to save Melmetal, goes into Slowbro, and dodges a Rotom Hydro Pump. Always unfortunate. Rotom probably wishes it could use Surf or Scald, but Hydro Pump is the only water attack it learns, so has to rely on that unreliable move. But Rotom could threaten high damage with a Volt Switch. Over-predicts, unfortunately, goes for the Will-O-Wisp as Slowbro stays in and sets up Future Sight. But once again, Rotom could threaten high damage with a Volt Switch, which Luncraft could counter with Garchomp, which Rotom could counter with Will-O-Wisp. Or it could just continue missing Hydro Pumps. This poor Rotom, just nothing is going its way, as Slowbro is able to heal itself with Slack Off. And now this is the turn where Future Sight will land, which will probably not knock out Rotom, but Emerald Lasers would prefer to have Blissey or Scizor in once that lands. Goes into Crobat instead, as Slowbro sets up Teleport, but Crobat is going to take a severe amount of damage from this Future Sight. Luncraft brings in Weavile, and here comes the Future Sight. Almost knocks out Crobat, but this puts it in range where Weavile's Ice Shard will finish it off. So we'll see what Emerald Lasers does here. Chooses to go into Scizor. Weavile does go for the safe Ice Shard. Takes some damage from Poison. It's going to be knocked out by Poison, so if Scizor has a Roost, it might go for it here. Or it could just go for Bullet Punch, as if Scizor goes for knockoff. Alright. Instead, we see the super risky play. Emerald Lasers sets up the Swords Dance as Luncraft switches in Tornadus. And now Emerald Lasers is in an excellent position, as it can use Bullet Punch to threaten severe damage on this Tornadus. And yeah, with the Swords Dance boost and Life Orb, it's able to knock it out with a Bullet Punch. And we do see Garchomp coming in. It's at higher health than the last time it had to take a +2 Bullet Punch, but this is going to be pretty close. It might come down to a range here, whether this Bullet Punch knocks out Garchomp. Here it is. Oh, and Garchomp barely survives. And with Iron Barbs and Rocky Helmet, or Rough-Skin rather, and Life Orb, Scizor knocks itself out. Garchomp goes for the Fire Blast, but there's nothing to hit. Emerald Laser is able to bring in Azumarill. Luncraft predicts the Aqua Jet, brings in Slowbro, and takes quite a bit of damage from Rocky Helmet. But, alright, big knockoff here from Azumarill. Not only able to get rid of Slowbro's Rocky Helmet, but does quite a bit of damage to it. But Azumarill is down to 2%, which means it'll be knocked out by its own Life Orb the next attack it uses. But Luncraft is going to have to switch something into this Azumarill. This might be an opportune moment to sacrifice Melmetal. Does go into Melmetal, but Emerald Lasers reads the switch, goes into Rotom, and is able to fire off an attack here basically free. Unless he misses the Hydro Pump, which he does, but he's only punished with a little bit of damage from Thunder Punch. But this is the turn that Future Sight landed, and that deals severe damage to Rotom. It's able to get up the rest here, heal itself, and with Melmetal Burn, it just can't threaten enough damage to punish Rotom for healing itself. Luncraft brings in Weavile as Emerald Lasers burns the first sleep turn, and Weavile is able to go for a knockoff, get a bit of damage off before it falls to Toxic. Now, Luncraft's big problem here is Slowbro and Melmetal. Well, Melmetal doesn't do anything, and Slowbro is walled by Blissey. So, alright, Rotom wakes up this turn, is able to take Garchomp's hit and finishes off with Hydro Pump, and this is Emerald Laser's game to lose at this point, as Blissey walls and can knock out the rest of Luncraft's team with Seismic Toss. Luncraft does bring in Melmetal to try and get one last desperate attack off before it faints, and Emerald Lasers is not going to give him the opportunity, knocks him out with Hydro Pump. And now it's just Slowbro who is going to have to try and take a Rotom's Volt Switch if it wants to even continue this game, and it cannot, so that gets knocked out, and that is a 2-1 victory for Emerald. So next up we have Feral versus Ren. And let's see how both these players adapt to having seen each other's teams. We see same teams from both players. Last game we saw Ren lead Tyranitar both games to set up the Sandstorm, and indeed Ren leads with Tyranitar again, as Beryl leads with Landorus, which is a great matchup for Beryl. Landorus does threaten out Tyranitar, gets up the Toxic, takes a Stone Edge, which does a reasonable amount, but likely looking at a defensive Landorus, goes for Earthquake and is able to severely damage Tyranitar as it sets up the Stealth Rock, but Tyranitar does fall to the Toxic Poison. Landorus standing strong here. It has great matchups against most of Ren's team, walling Zero Aura for the most part, and able to stop Excadrill. So Ren brings in Umbreon, which is a great matchup against Lando having revealed Toxic, as Umbreon has synchronized. So if Landorus decides to poison the Umbreon, it'll get poisoned right back. Instead, Umbreon goes for Yaw, makes Landorus drowsy, and as a result, Beryl's going to switch out, but he takes Rocky Helmet damage from the Umbreon, going for the U-turn. Beryl is able to bring out Ferrothorn, and Ren goes into Blaziken. So Blaziken is an excellent setup sweeper, which Beryl needs to play around quickly before it starts setting up Speed Boost and Swords Dance. So it also forces out Ferrothorn here, which means Ren has a free turn to set up a Swords Dance if she wants. Beryl does bring in Landorus, and Blaziken goes immediately for the Flare Blitz and is able to do quite high damage. And it seems like Blaziken doesn't have Speed Boost, so it's possible that Landorus will outspeed, but it would need quite a bit of speed investment. Instead, Beryl brings in Dragapult, takes Stone Edge from Blaziken, and Dragapult is definitely faster than Blaziken without Speed Boost. So Ren is going to switch Blaziken out, goes into Scizor, and is able to fairly easily take Dragapult's Draco Meteor. And with its special attack drop, Dragapult switches out. Beryl brings in Heatran, which takes Scizor's knockoff. Renrink is able to switch Blaziken in, which takes reasonable damage from Magma Storm, but Heatran Blaziken forces Heatran out with the threat of a fighting move, so Beryl is going to switch out here. Beryl brings in Landorus, is able to intimidate Blaziken, and Blaziken misses the Stone Edge, but switching out cancels the Magma Storm trap, so Ren doesn't have to worry about taking passive damage. And now here's the question, is Blaziken faster than Landorus? If Blaziken is not faster than Landorus, Beryl can knock it out with Earthquake, but if it is, Blaziken can probably knock out Landorus at this point. Ren isn't going to risk it, goes into Umbreon, as Landorus goes for U-turn, takes more damage from Rocky Helmet, but Beryl is able to bring in a Heatran, who threatens out Umbreon now that it's so low. Heatran goes for the Taunt, which is able to block Umbreon's Yawn. Now, in terms of attacking moves, Umbreon often carry Foul Play, but that won't do that much damage to a special Heatran. So Renrink might want to switch out here. He goes into Blaziken, as Heatran is able to get up the Stealth Rock, and once again, so Blaziken goes for Stone Edge, gets a critical hit. Apparently all the Heatrans get crit in this tournament, but Heatran is able to knock it out with Earth Power, and with Stealth Rock and Spikes up, that will severely pressure any switch-ins that Renrink tries to do. Goes into Excadrill, which is able to threaten Heatran out with Earthquake and go for Rapid Spin. Beryl brings in Dragapult to block Rapid Spin, since it's a Ghost type. And Dragapult threatens most of Ren's team, but it is outsped by Zero Aura. We'll likely see Ren Death Butter Umbreon, who isn't that useful at this point at so low HP. And decides to leave in Excadrill, and it is one-hit KO'd by a crit from Dragapult's Flamethrower. And Ren now brings in Umbreon, who takes severe damage from Spikes and Stealth Rock, and Dragapult is able to use another Flamethrower to knock it out. So we really see those entry hazards pressuring Ren's team. able to bring her Mons into range where Dragapult can knock them out. Ren is going to bring in Zeraora here, which is just barely faster than Dragapult, so forces Beryl to switch out. But Beryl still has Ferrothorn reasonably healthy, who can wall any Zeraora that does not have close combat. Brings in Ferrothorn, and Zeraora goes for Plasma Fists and takes recoil damage from Iron Barbs and Rocky Helmet. Just so much passive damage coming out from Beryl. And we do see the close combat, and is able to deal quite severe damage to Ferrothorn, but once again takes Iron Barbs, takes Rocky Helmet, and Ferrothorn goes for Leech Seed, able to drain some of Zeraora's HP. Now, if Zeraora goes for another close combat, both it and Ferrothorn will be knocked out. Beryl decides to bring in Dragapult, able to immune the close combat, and Leech Seed finishes off Zeraora. And at this point, Dragapult can easily take a Bullet Punch and knock out Scizor with Flamethrower. Yeah, so Beryl takes that one in convincing fashion. So, moving on to Game 2, we see the same team from both players, and we'll see if Ren changes up her lead. She wasn't really able to make use of Sand Rush in the previous game, which would allow her Excadrill to outspeed things like Dragapult. Ren is going to lead with Umbreon, once again able to punish Landorus with Synchronize and Rocky Helmet. Is able to set up Wish while Beryl brings in Ferrothorn. Umbreon goes for Yawn, making Ferrothorn drowsy as it sets up the spikes. So Ferrothorn needs to choose to switch in something else or fall asleep, which will allow Ren to switch in one of her sweepers. Beryl decides to go into Landorus, gets the Intimidate off, and we do see Foul Play, making use of Landorus's decent attack and ignoring both the Intimidates. It's able to do about half to Lando. So Lando gets a bit of chip with U-turn, but takes damage from Rocky Helmet as Beryl decides to U-turn into Ferrothorn. But Umbreon reads that well, goes for another Yawn, and puts Beryl in the same position of needing to either have something fall asleep or keep switching around Umbreon. Ferrothorn decides to go to sleep, is able to get the Leech Seed off on Umbreon, and the Yawn puts it to sleep. And Umbreon sets up the Wish to heal itself, and goes into Blaziken to hopefully make use of this sleep and set up a Swords Dance. So, Beryl, realizing that now is not the time to try and wake up from sleep, goes into Lando as Blaziken sets up one Swords Dance. Very strange, again, to not be seeing Speed Boost. And after tanking barely a Stone Edge, Landorus is able to knock Blaziken out with Earthquake. Ren is able to bring in Scizor, which does threaten Landorus out from this range with Bullet Punch. Beryl switches in Ferrothorn, gets crit by the Bullet Punch, but is able to deal more damage back to Scizor than it took thanks to Iron Barbs and Rocky Helmet. And now Ferrothorn is going to try and burn the rest of these sleep turns. Ren brings in her Tyranitar, as Ferrothorn finally wakes up, is able to get the Leech Seed off, and Tyranitar can get Fire Blast, and that's a move they sometimes use, so we'll see if it goes for it. It might KO. Goes for Stone Edge instead, gets another critical hit, but Ferrothorn survives easily, and misses the Power Whip, which is unfortunate for Beryl. Goes for the Earthquake. Despite being neutral, it does barely anything, so Ferrothorn is able to start setting up spikes. And the Leech Seed is slowly wearing Tyranitar down. Ren probably wants to save this Tyranitar because it's her only way of really outspeeding mons like Dragapult is with Sand Rush from Excadrill. Tyranitar does reveal Fire Punch, which does severe damage to Ferrothorn, but Ferrothorn does survive, just showing that enormous physical defense, and is able to punish Tyranitar with Iron Barbs and Rocky Helmet while sapping more HP from Leech Seed. Now, Tyranitar is faster and will KO with a second Fire Punch, so Beryl does switch out, and Landorus comes in and immediately gets knocked out by Fire Punch. But this gives Beryl the opportunity to switch in a Mon that he would want against Tyranitar. And with 3 layers of spikes down, Tyranitar will faint upon switching into spikes again. And if you send in a Mon who faints immediately to hazards, it does not set up weather. So Beryl brings in Dragapult, who can easily threaten Tyranitar from this range, and goes for Shadow Ball and is able to finish off the tiny amount of HP that Tyranitar still had left. Ren brings in Scizor, who takes 25% from spikes, and that is enough to put it into Shadow Ball KO range. And here we just see the power of stacking so many entry hazards that it can easily bring your Mons into range where they just can't take a hit from a Pokemon as fast and strong as Dragapult. Umbreon comes in, gets knocked out immediately by the spikes. So Ren really needs to bring an Excadrill, hope she can take a Shadow Ball and knock Dragapult out, but Dragapult, being a Ghost type, also blocks Rapid Spin. So Ren can't use that to clear away the spikes for Zeraora or the rest of her team. And Shadow Ball comes out. Excadrill does survive, but goes for the Swords Dance, and Dragapult is still faster, so it'll be able to knock Excadrill out with the second Shadow Ball. And Ren's last Mon is Zeraora, who is faster than Dragapult, assuming they're both running max speed. So if it has a move like Knockoff, it can take out this Dragapult here. It goes for the Plasma Fists, which does a reasonable amount, but is able to... Beryl knocks it out. Finals is between Beryl and Emerald Lasers. Let's see which of these players can take down the whole tournament and become the champion. So we see same teams, both players running the same teams that they have been running the entire tournament. Both players have seen their opponent's team in action, so we'll see how they adjust their leads. Both players considering their leads. In a lot of these games, the lead matchup has immediately gone in one player's favor, where the other player was forced to switch out and give their opponent 3 turns. And it seems like this will be the same, as Beryl leads Heatran into Lasers' Rotom. Rotom can immediately threaten Heatran out with Hydro Pump. Beryl does decide to respect it, switches in Ferrothorn, and does take a Hydro Pump. Rotom goes for Will-O-Wisp, burns the Ferrothorn, which will cripple its offense, and as Ferrothorn goes for Knockoff, it gets rid of Rotom's chest overlay. So that means Rotom won't be able to just click rest one time and fully heal itself. Emerald is going to go into his own Ferrothorn as Beryl's Ferrothorn attempts to go for Leech Seed, which fails because Leech Seed can't affect a Grass type. Beryl decides to switch in Heatran as Lasers' Ferrothorn sets up Stealth Rock. Now, Lasers could stay in. Looks like he switches into Rotom as Beryl's Heatran misses the Magma Storm. Magma Storm is a really important move for Heatran. It's his signature move and traps the opponent in while damaging them, but it's only 75% accurate, and we've seen these low accuracy moves really coming back to bite players in this tournament. Heatran here is afraid of getting knocked out by Hydro Pump, so Beryl is going to switch back into Ferrothorn. It takes a Hydro Pump relatively well, but Beryl's Ferrothorn doesn't have leftovers. It likely has Rocky Helmet, which will help it punish physical attackers, but that it also means it can't heal itself passively the way some of these other Ferrothorns can. So Rotom Volt switches, goes into Scizor, as Beryl's Ferrothorn is able to set up the spikes. Scizor sets up Swords Dance, which is quite scary for Beryl. Puts Emerald Lasers in a really good position because Beryl's best answer to a Scizor is Ferrothorn, and at this point it's too weak to really contest, so Scizor is able to go for a Brick Break and knock Ferrothorn out. Beryl brings in his Landorus, which intimidates the Scizor, but we've seen toxic and defensive moves on this Lando, so it probably doesn't have enough offense to knock Scizor out. Oh, I spoke too soon. Scizor was able to get good damage on it with the Bullet Punch, but Landorus, not even with the middling offensive investment it probably has, Landorus has great physical attack, so is able to knock that Scizor out. That tells me that Scizor was probably also running max speed, and Laser is able to come in with Azumarill here and revenge knockout Landorus with Aqua Jet. So Barrow brings in his Rillaboom, which immediately threatens Azumarill out, but he needs to make a prediction here. He could go for a fighting attack to try and hit Ferrothorn, or go for something like Knockoff to try and hit Crobat. Rillaboom can't hit both of those with one move. So does go for goes for the Grassy Glide as Emerald Lasers brings in Crobat, and Crobat, 4 times resisting that being Poison Flying, takes nearly nothing from it. Barrow brings in his Heatran as Crobat goes for the Super Fang, does half of Heatran's health. Thankfully Heatran, in addition to its leftovers, is able to heal up a little bit from the grassy terrain. Crobat probably can't severely damage Heatran, but Lasers has a fairly safe switch into Rotom, which he does go into here, as Heatran gets up to Stealth Rock. So now, both sides have quite a few entry hazards, and it seems like Barrel's potential defogger Landorus is gone, whereas it doesn't... we haven't seen Crobat use defog this turn, so Barrel's going to switch in Dragapult, which resists both of Rotom's Sand-type moves, and doesn't care that much about being burned. And now it can threaten big damage, but it's walled by Blissey, so we'll see if Emerald Lasers chooses to switch that in. Both players considering their moves here. We have a lot of entry hazards, which means anyone who chooses to switch around will start seeing quite a bit of passive damage. This isn't really a match where you can just continuously switch in different defensive Pokemon to blunt your opponent's offense. Lasers does bring in Blissey, which takes a quarter of its health from entry hazard damage, then gets hit by U-turn, the burn meaning it doesn't do that much damage. Barrow's able to bring in his Weavile. Grassy Terrain healing up both Mons here, but it ends on this turn. Emerald Lasers brings in his Ferrothorn, and Barrel's Weavile reveals a move we probably have, I don't think we've seen before, Low Kick, which is able to deal heavy damage to Ferrothorn, literally because it's quite heavy, and Low Kick deals damage based on weight. So that will immediately force Ferrothorn out for risk of being knocked out by a second one. Barrel is going, anticipating the switch, brings in his Heatran, and Emerald Lasers goes for the Toxic, which doesn't affect Heatran anyway. So Emerald Lasers brings in Rotom, takes Heatran's Magma Storm fairly well, but it's going to start taking passive damage. Rotom has Levitate, so it isn't affected by spikes, but it does take rocks damage, and takes the Heatran's Hydro Pump, just barely survives, but misses its second Magma Storm. Heatran wishes he could hit Rotom with Earth Power, but of course, Rotom levitating over that. Barrel decides to switch, brings in the Rillaboom, and it takes reasonable damage from the Hydro Pump. It's going to start healing up from grassy terrain, but we see Rillaboom has Life Orb, so it'll take even more recoil damage if it starts to attack, and once again needs to predict between Crobat and Ferrothorn. Here, Emerald Lasers brings in Ferrothorn, and Rillaboom goes for Knockoff, which after the entry hazard damage knocks out Ferrothorn. But that was quite a bit of recoil damage between Iron Barbs and Life Orb. Emerald Lasers brings in Crobat, which takes quite a bit of damage from Stealth Rock, but can immediately threaten Rillaboom out, and Barrow opts to just sacrifice his Rillaboom to the Crobat's Brave Bird to get a safe switch for his next attacker. Chooses to bring in Dragapult, which does outspeed Crobat. Dragapult is incredibly fast, so it threatens Crobat out here, but Emerald Lasers has a good switching in Blissey. Chooses to just leave Crobat in, but Dragapult, lowering its own special attack, will almost certainly switch out this turn. Lasers brings in his Blissey. Even after taking 50% of its HP, pretty much just from hazard damage, it has a free turn here to heal itself with soft-boiled as Barrel is forced to switch out. Instead, he goes for the seismic toss, and after taking entry hazard damage, that's enough to knock out Barrel's Heatran. So Barrel goes into Weavile, which can likely scare off Blissey. Emerald Lasers doesn't want to risk it, brings in his Rotom, which is knocked out by knockoff from Weavile, but Emerald Lasers is now able to bring in his Azumarill. He takes more damage from entry hazards, but we see Weavile seemingly choiced. It was locked into knockoff there, so it was unable to outspeed Azumarill, who was going for the Aqua Jet. Azumarill goes for another Aqua Jet, able to deal some damage to Dragapult. Dragapult goes for Shadow Ball, and does knock out the Azumarill, so Emerald Lasers is down to its last Pokemon, which is Blissey. But Barrel doesn't even want to play it out. His Dragapult is choice locked into Shadow Ball, which can't deal damage to Blissey, and so he just forfeits. Game 2, Barrel, switching up his team for the first time this tournament, is bringing a Rain team similar to what Luncraft was running. The only difference we see is he swapped out Moltres for Keldeo. So we'll see if this different team is able to give him an advantage over Emerald Lasers. Emerald Lasers did beat a team similar to this on his way here, but we'll see if the outcome is different this time. Keldeo, notably, is one of the only special attackers that doesn't care about Blissey at all, because it has access to a move called Secret Sword that is a special move but damages the opponent's physical defense. So that might give Barrel an edge here. Both trainers leading with their Ferrothorn, so neither can really damage the other. Barrel's going to go for knockoff, get rid of his opponent's leftovers, while Emerald's Ferrothorn sets up Stealth Rock. So Emerald will probably switch out his Ferrothorn this turn, and yes, he does, goes into Azumarill. We've seen that this Azumarill does have superpower, so here it comes. One hit KO, just so much damage from this Azumarill. Takes damage from the Iron Barbs and Life Orb, but is still being able to get rid of Barrel's Ferrothorn is a really, really big advantage for Emerald Lasers. Barrel brings in his Pelipper, which takes Stealth Rock damage, and Barrel does not really have time to switch to set up the defog with this scary Azumarill here. But Emerald Lasers might want to switch it out, as its attack and defense are lowered by superpower. Barrel brings in his Barraskewda, while Emerald Lasers brings in Rotom, once again levitating over their spikes, and threatening Barraskewda out with a powerful electric move. So Barraskewda goes for Flip Turn, able to get some decent damage on, and switching out. Barrel brings in his Zapdos, as Will-O-Wisp misses, which wouldn't have mattered that much, because Zapdos isn't a physical attacker. So Zapdos can fire a relatively free attack here, as it's faster than Rotom, but Emerald Lasers has a fairly safe switch-in Blissey. Goes for the Thunder. Wow, that was a fortunate turn of events for Barrel. The Thunder almost knocks out Rotom Wash, and that Hydro Pump, which was boosted by Rain and would have dealt a severe amount of damage, actually misses. Barrel goes for the Hurricane, predicting correctly a switch, as Emerald brings in his Ferrothorn, is able to deal quite a bit of damage from it. A second Hurricane will probably knock it out. And now Emerald Lasers brings in his Blissey, and we see just how little damage that Hurricane does. Blissey just so enormous special defense. Barrel switches in Keldeo, as Blissey goes for Toxic. So, even though Blissey won't be able to stay in on this Keldeo, it still did a great job at wearing it down. And while Emerald Lasers doesn't have any mon that can perfectly wall Keldeo, Azumarill at least resists both of its attacks, and Crobat can switch into Secret Sword fairly well, and outspeeds and threatens Keldeo with Brave Bird. So we'll see how Barrel reacts to that. This is also the final turn of Rain, so Barrel will want to bring his Pelipper back in to set that up again. Barrel chooses to switch in Zapdos, as Crobat goes for a Brave Bird, does fairly minor damage, but Rain is gone, and it seems like Zapdos relying on Thunder to deal damage. It's much more inaccurate when the Rain is not up, but does hit the Blissey, but does fairly minor damage. Barrel switches in his own Seismitoad, even though the Rain isn't up, and Blissey is able to heal itself with Soft Boiled. So Seismitoad looks to be a special attacker, so not much that he can really do to Blissey, but maybe Barrel is trying to use the threat of physical attacks to force Blissey to switch out while he sets up the Stealth Rock. We've seen Blissey's only method of really dealing damage are Toxic and Seismic Toss, which can't damage a Pokemon that quickly. Emerald Lasers could also switch out here. Ferrothorn would be a fairly safe switch. Goes into Crobat as Seismitoad sets up the Stealth Rock. So Crobat does outspeed Seismitoad as Rain is not up. Goes for Super Fang and does half its health, while Seismitoad goes for Surf and knocks Crobat down to about half as well. We see a bit of a difference between these two teams. Lundcraft's Seismitoad has Weather Ball, which does more damage when Rain is up, but isn't a Water-type move when it's not. So Barrel Seismitoad able to at least deal Water-type damage while the Rain is down. Barrel brings in Zapdos, tanks Crobat's Brave Bird, and can threaten it out, but Emerald Lasers has a safe switch in Blissey. Instead, Emerald Lasers opts to switch in Rotom, which is immediately knocked out by the Stealth Rock damage, and gives Barrel Zapdos a free turn to heal itself with Roost. But now Emerald Lasers has the initiative, and he can choose what Mon he wants to bring in without risking being hit by a Zapdos' attack. So, likely expecting Blissey, and yes, here it is. But now that Stealth Rock and Spikes are up, it takes a quarter of its health just from switching in. And while it can heal itself, it can't just keep switching in infinitely. Here, Barrel switches in Keldeo as Emerald Lasers switches in Crobat, which once again is a great switch in for Emerald Lasers. Crobat has the advantage, but it also takes a quarter of its health from Stealth Rock. Being weak to Rock, Stealth Rock does twice as much damage. So Barrel will need to bring something in that can handle this Crobat. And indeed, he goes into Zapdos as Crobat goes for Brave Bird and gets hit by Zapdos' Static. That was a major swing. Static is a 30% chance when you get hit by a contact move to paralyze your opponent, and now that Crobat's paralyzed, it's slower than Zapdos. So Emerald Lasers is going to save it, switches in his Blissey, and takes, again, almost no damage from that Hurricane, but takes another quarter of its health, switching into those hazards. And Barrel brings in Keldeo, who takes a reasonable amount of damage from being hit by Blissey's Seismic Toss, but now can fire off a Secret Sword. Emerald Lasers brings in his Ferrothorn basically as death fodder, as it can't do much if it has to switch in with both hazards up, and Keldeo is starting to be damaged by that toxic poison. Now that Crobat's paralyzed, Keldeo is faster than that as well. The only thing it has to worry about is Azumarill's Aqua Jet and Scissor's Bullet Punch, both of which it resists, but the only mon it can really threaten to one-hit KO are Blissey and Crobat, now that Crobat's severely damaged. So Emerald Lasers does bring in his Scizor. We've seen Bullet Punch and Brick Break as Scissor's two attacks, so it can't do too much damage to Keldeo. Well, maybe I spoke too soon. That was a good amount of damage, but Keldeo knocks it out with Surf, but then is knocked out by Toxic. So that might have been good for Lasers rather, ending Keldeo's reign of terror and keeping his defensive Pokemon safe. But Barrel now has an opportunity to bring Pelipper back in and set the rain up again. Emerald Lasers chooses to bring in his Azumarill, and both Mons take 25% of their health again because of those entry hazards. But that favors Lasers here, as Pelipper basically has to get out of here. Pelipper, actually faster than Azumarill, is going to go for U-turn. And Barrel brings in his Seismitoad, which will get absolutely walloped. Unless Azumarill misses, which is a possibility. Goes for the play rough, which is 90% accurate, and unfortunately rolls a bad hand, but Azumarill will be able to use Aqua Jet here and ignore Seismitoad's Swift Swim and just knock it out. So it might have been a mistake here for Beryl to set up the Rain, as that'll boost the power of Azumarill's Aqua Jet. So we've seen really big damage from this Azumarill, but this is a resisted hit. We'll see if Aqua Jet can knock out this Barraskewda. If not, Beryl can probably sweep the rest of Laser's team at +2 with Swift Swim up and Banded Liquidation. So this is the pivotal turn of the game, and let's see how it goes. Lasers doesn't really have any more options, as it can't really switch in anything. It doesn't have enough time to stall out the Rain, since we know Pelipper has a Damp Rock. He just needs to pray for an Aqua Jet, either dealing enough damage or the chance of getting a critical hit, which would certainly knock out Barraskewda here. And there's the Aqua Jet. Does not knock out Barraskewda. Likely looks like a crit would have taken it out, but without a critical hit, Aqua Jet, even though it was boosted by Rain and Azumarill's really high attack, is not able to knock out this Barraskewda. Barraskewda knocks it out with Liquidation, and at that point Emerald Lasers forfeits, knowing that Barraskewda can outspeed and knock out both of his other Pokemon. So, final game of the finals, and Beryl has switched back to his original team, seeming like he doesn't want to risk using Rain again. Is going to stick with the team that got him this far in the tournament, and let's see how that changes things. We've seen that Emerald Lasers doesn't seem to have hazard removal on any of his Mons. We haven't seen Crobat use Defog this entire time, so if Beryl can set up some hazards, that would help. Beryl, both trainers switching up their leads here, favoring Beryl this time. As Dragapult and Crobat come in, Emerald Lasers is going to immediately switch in Blissey, and takes about a quarter from Dragapult's Choice Specs boosted Draco Meteor, which will basically force Dragapult to switch out at this point, as it can't really damage Blissey. And Emerald Lasers, reading the switch, is going to go into Ferrothorn. And Beryl is going to switch out again, go into Heatran, as Lasers sets up his Stealth Rock. Lasers is going to go into Rotom. Heatran hits it with a Magma Storm. After the Magma Storm chip damage, does about a third. But Rotom here threatens it out with a Hydro Pump. We see Rotom misses the Hydro Pump as Heatran stays in, able to get the Stealth Rock up, and another turn of Magma Storm passive damage. So Rotom does still have its Chesto Berry. It can rest up and heal if it needs to, but right now momentum is so important. It'll likely just either go for the Hydro Pump and predict a switch and go for Volt Switch. Both of those will be could be good options for Lasers. Beryl decides to switch in his Dragapult, which again resists both of Rotom's attacks, while Rotom uses this opportunity to heal itself with Rest and eat its Chesto Berry to restore the sleep. Now Dragapult is in, and Emerald Lasers does immediately go into Blissey, and Beryl reads that switch while goes for the U-turn. Dragapult actually has very high attack, so the U-turn, even though it doesn't run any attack investment, still deals reasonable damage to Blissey, who has very poor defense, and Beryl is able to bring in his Ferrothorn. Lasers brings in Scizor as Ferrothorn sets up the spikes, so it seems like we've seen Scizor use Brick Break before. It seems like Lasers are going to try and set up a sweep here. Beryl wants to put a stop to that, goes into Landorus as Scizor sets up Swords Dance. Scissor's almost certainly going to need 2 hits of Bullet Punch to knock out Lando, but Lando will probably need 2 hits of Earthquake to knock out Scissor. And we do see big damage from Scissor's Bullet Punch, and also from Lando's Earthquake, but Scissor, having the priority, will win this trade if they both use another attack. Scissor, with 21%, does have 3 hits of Life Orb recoil before it faints just from that, which is rather fortunate, and means that Barrel will have a hard time trying to wear down the Scissor just from Life Orb recoil. Goes into Heatran, and Scissor reads that beautifully, goes for the Brick Break, and knocks out Heatran in a single hit. Now Barrel goes into Dragapult, which is immune to Brick Break, but fears Bullet Punch. Brings in Heatran as Scissor goes for the Ferrothorn rather, as Scissor goes for the Bullet Punch, and Scissor knocks itself out with Recoil. But Heatran was one of Barrel's key Pokemon, walling both Crobat and Ferrothorn, and now it's down. So both players lost an important piece here. Emerald Laser is going to go into Azumarill, which we've seen can one-hit KO Ferrothorn with Superpower, which means Barrel either needs to read the Superpower and go into something like Dragapult, or let his Ferrothorn faint. On Laser's side, he could try and predict and go for something like Aqua Jet, or he does go for Superpower and into Landorus, which also gets the Intimidate off, but none of that is going to be enough to stop Landorus from being knocked out by Azumarill and Aqua Jet, which we do see. It's had its stats severely lowered, but it's been able to take out another one of Barrel's important Mons. Barrel brings in this Dragapult, knowing it's faster than Azumarill, and doesn't fear being knocked out by anything. Does go for the U-turn, and taking damage from those entry hazards over and over allowed Barrel to wear down Emerald Laser's Blissey to the point where U-turn from Dragapult could knock it out. Barrel now bringing in his Rillaboom, which is walled by Crobat, but threatens the rest of Laser's team. We'll see what Laser's choosing to do here. Does bring in his Crobat, takes some damage from the Stealth Rock, and it seems like Barrel's going to bring in his Ferrothorn, which, because it doesn't have leftovers, really appreciates the healing from grassy terrain, as Crobat goes for Taunt, locking Ferrothorn into only using damaging moves. Crobat goes for Brave Bird, deals reasonable damage to Heatran, but takes damage from Iron Barbs and Rocky Helmet and from the recoil, as Barrel's Ferrothorn goes for Knockoff and gets rid of Crobat's leftovers. So another Brave Bird would actually knock out Crobat, and Emerald Laser, seeing that, is going to go for the Roost and heal itself up. Now the taunt ends, and Barrel's Ferrothorn could either try and set up the Leech Seed or predict another taunt and switch out, and it looks like that's what it does. It seems like neither happens, in fact, and Crobat goes for a second Roost. But now that Dragapult is in, with no Blissey to wall it, it can start firing off its powerful attacks. I don't know if we've seen Dragapult's Draco Meteor against a full health Crobat before. It looks like it might knock it out. In fact, it does not. And Crobat is able to knock Dragapult down to the point where it'll be knocked out by entry hazard damage, but dies to its own Brave Bird recoil. Azumarill goes for Aqua Jet, finishes off the Dragapult, who can't switch out. And this game is coming to a close, but I still can't call who will win it. Ferrothorn is a reasonable answer to Rillaboom, but it immediately threatens out Azumarill with the threat of Grassy Glide. Rillaboom is naturally faster than Azumarill, so even if it goes for Aqua Jet, which Rillaboom resists, Rillaboom will go first with Grassy Glide. And Emerald Lasers does see that, decides to go into Ferrothorn. We saw Barrel's Rillaboom has Superpower earlier, and that was able to deal severe damage to Ferrothorn, but after leftovers and healing from grassy terrain, it probably won't knock it out. So Barrel's Rillaboom decides to set up Swords Dance. That'll buff its Superpower to the point where it can knock out Ferrothorn. And Ferrothorn, for its part, uses Toxic and poisons the Rillaboom. Superpower does knock out Ferrothorn, but Iron Barbs, Rocky Helmet, Life Orb, and Toxic are all cutting into Rillaboom's HP. But it looks like Rillaboom might be able to just sweep the rest of Laser's team here. Depending on whether this Grassy Glide will be able to knock out Rotom, but at +1 attack and super effective, that might be the case, and Azumarill will be knocked out by Entry Houses as soon as it comes in. Here's the Grassy Glide, does knock out Rotom. Rillaboom does survive Life Orb and Toxic damage, and Azumarill walks in, steps on some pointy objects, and is knocked out. So Barrel able to take the finals in a tough 3-game set and win the tournament. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.